OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent modes.
Yeah, so it's been a headliner's dream so far as the World Cup has kicked off, and maybe we have a winner so far. Rising Stun. No, you're not feeling it, Shane?
I like it. It's not bad. Yeah,
not bad. I think it's like this could be like in headlines of the year.
Yeah, okay.
The headlines of the year were announced at the National Newspaper Awards, whatever they're called. I can't remember the name of them. But on this week, and there were some pretty good ones. Like when you have to sift through, what is it, at the end of Shawshank Redemption, 5 miles of shit. we do come up with some good ones. The other headlines this morning are about Avram Grant. The Glazers, and
that's the other famous Avram, of course.
Yanks a Billion is the other vaguely good. There was one other good one that I've now lost.
You're not on the judging panel, are you?
I'm not. No. I mean, I don't know why.
Yeah, you should be.
I mean, I'm very well qualified for this. Japandemonium, the biggest World Cup shock since Tuesday, is
I like that one.
Hats off to the Daily Mail.
Yeah,
credit where credit's due.
I like Japandemonium. Japan proving that substitutes work. Made 5 subs in the second half yesterday, and 2 of them scored. I mean, strength and depth. You
do kind of think that maybe it's a different game. It's a bit like rugby. 5 subs completely changes everything.
Yeah,
you can go out and run, and then we're going to replace you with an athlete who can run and run and run and run. And if there is any kind of organisation and talent and skill applied to that, then all of a sudden it's a different team you're playing.
Yeah, 100%. Fresh legs. Like if you're watching the first half, you're thinking Germany are going to win this game reasonably comfortably. Chances galore, hit the post. Japan keeper had to make a number of unbelievable saves at times, and yet, like I was listening to Ilkay Gundogan coming out after the match, and he was saying not everyone wanted the ball, which is a very, very harsh thing to say about your team.
That.
So he was he basically said players had shared responsibility. But to say that not everyone wanted the ball is
name names. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's fairly direct. So not a good thing to hear from one of the German players if you're in the German camp or a German fan.
Thomas Müller really still one of the best 11 footballers in Germany. Like, he's been around a very, 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 very long time.
He has big games still for Bayern.
Was there not like a little bit of one of those heritage tour elements to sticking him in the team at the start? No?
Maybe, but like, isn't he one of those like World Cup big game players? Miroslav Klose type players where you're going to show up and score a few goals?
Yeah.
Maybe. Experience tells in a World Cup. You kind of need it. Although Manuel Neuer yesterday parrying the ball out straight to his 6-yard box for Japan to score wasn't exactly telling in terms of experience, but that was a cracking game. Hansi Flick under pressure, because if they lose to Spain on Sunday, then I think, well, they're pretty much gone, because Japan will beat Costa Rica.
Was Hansi Flick all that as the Bayern manager?
I mean, I suppose international management is different, isn't it? Like it's less focused, less intense. But then when the World Cup comes around, it's different. He wasn't the best Bayern manager that's been in the last decade.
No, it's still the same game.
Yeah,
like you still want to like have a good record. You still want to exhibit it kind of. Yeah, I can handle this. Because it's not the same as like it's as pressurized as the England job.
Yeah, it's fair. But then like the Spain job's a pressurised job, and Luis Enrique
he was born to that, and like has some Madridistas and some Barcelona fans who still, I think, would get behind him. He understands all of that. He's a different character, and actually, he managed Messi in a fight with him and won the league.
Yeah.
So I think
he's likeable as well. Like, he was very animated on the sideline for much of the game yesterday, and then as soon as it went to maybe 5 or 6, he like slowly took his seat and he was like, okay, my job is done here, and I don't want to rub it in to Costa Rica.
What was the crack with Rudiger?
So Colin, our producer, was showing me the video beforehand. So essentially the 64th minute of the Germany-Japan game, Rudiger does this exaggerated run with his knees high in the air towards the touchline to shepherd the ball out of play and win himself a goal kick, and smiling afterwards, smirking afterwards. So fairly cocky with 25 minutes plus stoppage time to play, and we know in this World Cup stoppage time is fairly significant. So Rudiger got what was coming to him with Japan getting those 2 late goals. So cockiness doesn't go all the way. Like, if you're gonna showboat and do that, maybe wait till at least 85 minutes when you're 1-0 up, not 65. So a bad move by Antonio Rudiger. Big result for Japan though.
Are any of these teams going to do anything for us? Like, do we want these results at this stage of the competition, or does it actually ruin the quarterfinals?
Well, like you can foresee like a 2002 job, South Korea and Turkey in a semi-final.
Yeah, wasn't great, was it?
That wasn't great. But I mean, yeah, you kind of want one of these teams to get to a final if they're going to do something.
No, we don't.
No?
They'll just get hammered in the final.
Do you think so?
Yeah, they'll get hammered in the final by somebody who knows what they're doing. That's the problem. It's like, these shocks are great in one-off, but you need to get rid of all the bad teams. Look, maybe that's what the whole point of the round of last 16 is. But
well, I heard the Uruguay manager, interestingly, and they're playing this morning, isn't it, or today anyway, against South Korea, and like he was basically saying before the World Cup, we are here to win the World Cup.
Well, they've who else in that group? That if memory serves, a bit of
Uruguay,
a group of death.
South Korea, Portugal, Ghana.
Yeah, that's a group of death.
Yeah.
But if you're Uruguay and you look at the talent of players you have and the fact that you can score goals and you can defend, like, not much else you need for things to break your way to reach a semi-final, and then, you know, all bets are off. Like, really kind of not amazing teams have won some World Cups recently.
Yeah, but that would be a surprise if the likes of Uruguay could do it. I'd put that in a shock.
Germany grand, Italy grand when they won the World Cup. They weren't absolutely astonishingly amazing all-time great teams, but they won those World Cups by being hard to beat and scoring when they needed to.
And look, we're signing. Everyone is signing the death warrant for Germany and Argentina already. But like, Spain lost their opening game in 2010 and went on to win the tournament. It can be done. It's not ideal, but I mean, it can be the kick up the ass that some teams need.
Yeah, the collapse of Germany was maybe too precipitous, and the fact that both those teams were in front in those games, whereas actually Switzerland beat Spain 1-0. I think it matters. I think that, like, Spain just didn't perform in that opening game, and they still had some of the best players in the world, so it's not quite the same.
The other thing that kind of came to my attention yesterday, obviously Canada, when Alphonso Davies is stepping up for that penalty, you're thinking they've never scored a World Cup goal. This is only it's their fourth game, second World Cup. But I mean, you're thinking this is a historic moment. Alphonso Davies about to score Canada's first ever goal, take the lead in a huge game against Belgium, the second ranked team in the world, although they shouldn't be the second ranked team in the world. And yeah, he just looked really nervous. Same for Lewandowski, like for Poland against Mexico, has never scored in a World Cup, looked really nervous taking the penalty. I just feel like Lewandowski and Alphonso Davies lining up for those two penalties were quite aware of the weight of pressure in two different ways that were on their shoulders. So
Colin was complaining about the referee taking an age to let Alphonso Davies take that penalty. Like, notwithstanding that, right, but also the number of chances that they created in that first half, and Thibaut Courtois putting in another incredible I am going to save my team tonight performance. He's good at football, Thibaut Courtois. I don't know if you knew that, Shane.
As it turns out, first time a Belgian keeper saved a penalty in a World Cup since '66.
Hot take.
Yeah.
Again, you know, everybody's complaining about how crap Belgium were, but like, let's add Lukaku back into the team, give De Bruyne a little bit of time to get some form and fitness. It looked like he wasn't quite fully fit.
He got man of the match, apparently, someone said, which,
I mean, so I presume, is it the Belgian COCOM giving that?
Essentially.
Like, no, it's the press. Yeah, but like
the sponsor, yeah.
Yeah, but who's picking it for the sponsor?
Well, that's the question.
Like, someone has. Well, you know, when the whatever is it Carlsberg player of the match on the RTE football commentary gives it, it's like someone picks it.
Yeah.
No, there isn't like a Carlsberg beer bottle going, oh, I like the cut of the right back's jib today. It's the same. There's not a Budweiser bottle there going, I've had 3.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go for.
Well, is there?
I recognise De Bruyne after that. That's not what happens.
Is there unsponsored FIFA coverage? No, or unbiased FIFA coverage that's just generic, and they have a commentator from a certain country. I don't know. But either way, he didn't deserve to.
Well,
be
there
man of the match.
is the world feed that the host broadcaster who would be in would be sorting out.
Yeah,
so maybe
but look, like
whoever's on COCOM for that gets to pick it. But like, again, that's like I mean, it was Courtois, right?
Yeah. Oh, it had to be. Yeah, I mean, the amount of chances that Canada had, and Belgium looked so vulnerable to that pace and attack and play that Canada had, and that'd be a concern if you're following Belgium.
Yeah. Now here's the thing, though. Like, as Kev Kilban was on 2 days ago, if you missed it, he was on talking about the attacking trio that Canada have, and he was like, they're really brilliant, fast, pacey, good control. Not everybody has those 3 quality up front. So I hope Canada can bounce back, and I hope that they can get a bit of joy in this competition, because they deserve it. They played really well, and you can see why they'd be heartbroken after that. And you could also see how that was their chance. They blow it. The aftermath of that is a massive letdown as well. So Right, OTB AM brought to you live with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent mo. You can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. Flick did win a treble during the COVID year. I know the German league is a given, but Pep couldn't win the Champions League with them. And Bracken says, I think you're selling Japan short here, lads. They have some quality players. They do, and they also had a manager, as Shane points out, was willing to make the changes that they needed to do. I was just reading on Twitter a German football analyst who is very annoyed about Flick, talking about some of the players who should have come on earlier. Gundogan should have come off later. Musiala was playing really well, and a lot of people think it's unpredictable, but I've seen this particular game too many times. Many shots from the box, but there are too many bodies in there from Germany's type of possession without a box presence to create a decent chance. It was apparent in the first half, so you need to change that, and that's why Germany didn't take advantage. Not a big Flick fan, just generally. So and that's Jasmine Baba on Twitter.
If you're Flick now trying to prepare this team for Spain, I mean, you're going to be watching the tape of last night, and albeit it's Costa Rica, probably the worst team in the tournament, but Spain just looked unbelievable. Gavi's volley was one of the goals of the tournament so far, just so delicately taken, and even Morata's a laughing stock before the tournament. He comes on and he does the business. They're just unbelievable. Like, they'll be hard stopped, and we kind of talked about them during the Euros 2 years ago as this young team up and coming. They're still a very, very young team, but they have that little bit of hardened experience now, I guess. And well, as you say, under someone like Luis Enrique, I mean, you'd find it hard to see Germany getting anything off that Spain team on Sunday. And if that's the case, then we're going to have a big early exit. Germany going out of the group stages for the second World Cup in a row, which would be a disaster for them. So that's probably the game of the weekend, I think, the way it's been set up.
Not England, America for you?
I mean, before the tournament, I was actually looking at this as a potential banana skin for England, but the way they played in the opening game, and again, opposition notwithstanding in Iran, but England are just good. They're very good. Saw a photo yesterday of young Jude Bellingham wearing a Republic of Ireland jersey as a kid. He's wearing the full kit. So,
you think one that could have got it?
One that got away. Well, I know Roy Keane was having a bit of back and forth with Ian Wright, was it, yesterday on this? Grealish and Rice, and a little bit of slagging about the English stealing our players. But best of luck to them. I hope they do well, Grealish and Rice.
Yeah, the whole country's behind them. If you want to get in touch, 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 a.m. Dave McIntyre is going to join us for his World Cup thoughts so far. Andy Mitten is going to update us on what the general vibe is amongst the Manchester United fans with the increasing likelihood that the club will be sold. We're bringing some sports news and a roundup of everything else going on at 8:35. Matt Williams is going to join us at 8:50. Noel McGrath 9:15. New Tipperary captain officially anointed, and Packie Bonner. You've been talking to Packie. Interesting stuff about Caoimhín Kelleher. He's fairly certain that he knows what he thinks is the right thing to happen.
Yeah, Packie, like I was kind of putting to him that, you know, we're blessed to have Bazunu and Kelleher playing the football that they're playing, and even Mark Travers playing really well this season as well. And he's almost forgotten about in the discussion. But yeah, Packie very much of the opinion that Caoimhín Kelleher needs a loan move away at this stage. He's got that experience with Alisson and the experience of playing and training with Liverpool over the years and getting the little bit of game time here and there in the cups. But yeah, at this stage, I think he needs to have a loan move away. Packie was the same. Very interesting, Packie talking about Italia 90 as well, and Daniel Timofte, who he met up with, I think, thereafter, a few years later, for some sort of media discussion. And he said Timofte normally went straight down the middle with his penalties, and that day was told that Packie Bonner was slow down to his right hand side, and that's of course why he went to Packie's right and our left, and the rest is history, as Packie said himself. You know, sliding doors moment. Maybe if Timofte hadn't listened and gone down the middle, it could have gone differently, but that's the way it panned out. So he also kind of backed these calls for, I know John Aldridge was saying it on our roadshow recently, but a statue for Jack Charlton somewhere, potentially at the Aviva Stadium, along with, you know, other rugby recognition maybe as well. So that'll be something that'll be nice to see, and Packie very much backing up those calls. Yeah.
I mean, or you could put I think there is a Jack Charlton statue besides, I want to say, the River in Mayo in Ballina. Is there?
Rings a
bell.
Am
I right? Is it the Moy in Ballina?
Geography.
Does anybody know? There's something in my head about that, or maybe it's just a plaque or something. Jack did love going fishing in Mayo, and I'm fairly sure
that rings a bell.
There's something there. But about Caoimhín Kelleher, go out and loan.
Yeah, I mean,
no ifs, ands or buts. He was fairly definitive about it.
Yeah, well, as soon as I asked him, he said, "I knew you were going to ask me this," and yeah, I think at this stage it is a loan move. That's what he needs. There's only so much benefits you can get from, as he pointed out, from being at Liverpool constantly and not getting game time and being the number 2 to Alisson. So he definitely very much was of the opinion that he needs to go out now and play, and that's a fact. Like, even you look at strikers like Evan Ferguson, even like there's talk of him now going out on loan in January from Brighton. That would be great for him, and there's so many clubs after him. Load of clubs will be looking for Caoimhín Kelleher's services. Like, the experience he's gotten, cups for Liverpool, and he's a penalty expert too.
What if like his level is to be a backup at one of the best clubs, and that's fine. Like, what, because obviously he can do that for the next 20 years and be a reliable number 2, never putting the number 1 under any specific threat, and you have a great career. But what if you go and have a loan move and it backfires?
But you'd imagine someone of Caoimhín Kelleher's talent and it's not going to backfire. Well, look at Bazunu at Southampton. Kelleher's at his level. It's
in the range of outcomes, though.
Yeah, potentially. But I mean, you don't want to die not knowing. Or retire not knowing in years to come. Jesus, if I just gone out on loan instead of spending those 3 or 4 years
making millions.
Well, making millions, of course, but I mean, he want to play football, doesn't he?
Well, a job's a job.
Yeah, but he's not going to get international options and time on the pitch if he's not playing regular football. That's why Bazunu's in there.
On the balance of probabilities, he has to go, and if it doesn't really work out, Liverpool are still going to bring him back, and then he can sit on the bench perhaps and be happy with his lot, and they'll be like, look, we let you go. And but then I suppose if he does go and it's a great year, what does he do then? Then he has to move.
Yeah, then he's a Premier League starting goalkeeper, isn't he? Well, if Bazunu is, then Caoimhín Kelleher is. And maybe we have green tinted glasses over here, but I don't think so.
Bazunu is clearly better than Kelleher at the moment.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say if Bazunu is, Kelleher is at all,
because he's playing regular football.
But he's clearly better. Like, he's got a better range of skills. He's like more commanding. He's ahead of him. I don't like.
That's more of an argument for him to go out on loan.
Well, sure, but don't think Caoimhín Kelleher could well be one of the top 30 goalkeepers in English football, which would make him like top of the championship goalkeeper, which is an amazing career, right? There's only one of these jobs, really, starting jobs, as we know, in the Premier League for 20 goalkeepers. Bazunu may well be in the top 10. Like, we don't know yet. We'll have to wait and see exactly what his ceiling is, but yeah, I don't think it's a slam dunk that everything goes in a straight line. And you have to look at like the rest of the players who come through at around the same time when Kenny took over, Andrew Omobamidele, Adam Ida. The injury profile of those players in particular has been really devastating to the pace at which we thought their career was going to develop. We thought they'd both be playing Premier League football week in, week out by now, and they definitely have the talent for it, but they just have been let down. So, like, it's not a straight line, go out and loan, everything's going to be great. You're going to find a manager who plays the type of football that you want to or suits you. Make 2 mistakes early on in the championship for managers under pressure, you're out of there. And he has no loyalty to you. He sends you back and it's like tail between your legs. Troy Parrott is a great example of this, where this is his 3rd loan move, am I right? The first one, complete disaster. The second one, slightly better. This one, taking its time to get to a level where it's starting to work, and then it starts to work and the hamstring comes off the bone and he's out for a significant period of time. So I don't know. I just I can see why if you're in Caoimhín Kelleher's camp, you're saying there's no rush here. You need to get to a point of absolute like high performing excellence in every aspect of your life, and then when you're confident enough that you're going to be able to walk into a dressing room and go, I'm from Liverpool. I was on the bench in the Champions League final and I've won cups and I deserve to be here, and I'm going to be a leader in the dressing room and I'm going to really benefit from this experience.
I'm getting that from Kelleher already, those vibes. Like, as opposed to 18 months ago, 2 years ago. I think he's improving that in his confidence, even the way he conducts himself in interviews. The advantage Kelleher has in terms of a loan move, Ger, I would say, is that he would have options. It's not like he's going to have one offer or 2 offers coming in. He will have a multitude of offers because he's so good and he's got the experience of Liverpool. So he can sit down, analyse the clubs that have come in for him, see who's in charge there, see what their system is like, and how happy he would be in terms of quality of life moving to that place, and at least he has the option. So I think he has that benefit of being able to choose, because he'll have so many people in for him, that he can kind of pick and choose managers that he wants to play under as well. So
it's a fair point.
It's an advantage.
That is a fair point. So Packie thinks he should go and get a gig playing full-time first-team football on loan. And look, maybe Liverpool have decided, they can get 10-15 million for a goalkeeper who's played a full season at the top of the championship, and it's time for them to cash in and use that money to... I mean, that's kind of been their model for a long time. So, right, there was a statue of Jack Charlton at the old Cork airport. You're going to have to explain to me, there are 2 airports in Cork? Yeah? Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that, but obviously Colm, Cork man, is...
He's saying the one in 2011. That one, the 2011 one. Was that a new one in 2011? A new terminal built, so it's the same airport, a new terminal in there. Right. It's next to it in the same premises, but is it called the New Cork Airport? Is that okay? Of course it is.
Should be the Jack Charlton Airport. Come on, let's name an airport after him. It's been too long.
It'd be Knock though, wouldn't it?
It would be Knock, yeah.
Is Knock not named after the priest who invented it?
I think it is. Let's switch that out to Jack.
Why not?
I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's about time.
Might as well.
We do want to talk about this now, because we're going to talk about it again with Andy Mitten a little bit later on. Sky News doorstepped the Manchester United co-owner Avram Glazer. Not Avram Grant, that's a different fella. Avram Glazer, near his home in West Palm Beach in Florida. You can see the house in the background if you're watching this, by the way. It looks, the security of it kind of looks like it's just unsurprisingly nice gaff. Anyway, watch.
Is now the right time to sell Manchester United?
Hi, well, as we announced yesterday, the board went through a process and it's decided it's going to look at different strategic alternatives, and that's what we're doing. So,
United fans say that you should have sold the club years ago.
well, once again, we've gone through a process. We're going to look at all different strategic alternatives, and we'll see where that leads us. So I appreciate you talking to me tonight, and I'm going to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving.
Cristiano Ronaldo says that you don't care about the club, and thousands of United fans agree with him. Why should they be wrong?
Well, I'll tell you about Cristiano Ronaldo. He's a great Manchester United player. I appreciate everything he's done for the club, and I wish him the best luck in the future. Thanks very much.
Why did he have to leave the club? Why did he have to leave the club?
Well, he had to leave the club because he told the manager he didn't respect him. That one's like... sorry, it wasn't his gaff. It looked like his gaff when I was watching on Twitter at 6 o'clock this morning. But it's actually it's a restaurant.
Yeah, it looks a nice snazzy restaurant too, I'd imagine. Deer and headlights, he looked like there.
I don't think so. I think he comes across like, I've got one line to say and I'm going to keep saying it and I'm not going to give you anything.
He looked a bit surprised to see the reporter there, which is probably true. Yeah, it's it's a bit of a strange one for Avram Glazer because he's been involved in, I think he took over an oil natural gas company from his father in 1990, mid-90s. This is a company that was founded by George Bush Sr. He's an experienced man. He knows what the crack is, and he's obviously the forefront of this. The Glazer brothers, with the other two as well. So, I mean, it's funny because they love him in Tampa Bay.
Well, here's the thing, right? Manchester United fans say you should have sold the club years ago. Well, they'll be happy now, right? Yeah, we're making them happy. We're giving them what they want.
17 years they've had. And they've done nothing but saddle them with 500 million quid debts. And
but the debt hasn't.
Stadium falling apart. And
I still think there's fundamental misunderstanding of how this debt works. They've serviced the debt. They've made a load of money. They've revolutionised the commercial aspect of the business. Yes, they've taken money out of the club because that's what business people do. They invest to make money. And
but should you, as a very inordinately rich human being, take and pay dividends to yourself and your family?
That's how business works.
When the club is in debt and struggling,
but sure, that's the club.
Stadium's falling apart, and you're paying yourself dividends annually.
Well, yeah, because that's how the business works. And the debt, the debt exists, but it was being serviced, so it doesn't really matter. The debt has been a red herring for the Man United fans as some weird way for them to escape the fact that the football was so crap, and all those football people they believed in, Jose Mourinho, Louis van Gaal, David Moyes, Alex Ferguson made it work. Alex Ferguson was there and won championships with the Glazers. So somebody could have won championships with the Glazers. And
he won them before the Glazers too.
But sorry, so the Glazers had no impact on Alex Ferguson's ability to win championships. So therefore it's not the Glazers.
I think
it's the other mismanagement of the club. If David Gill had stayed, I think they would have been very successful.
Oh yeah, like he was
even with the
main man.
Glazers.
Yeah.
So it's not the Glazers. It's actually not the Glazers or the debt that's the issue. It's the chronic mismanagement of the investment. Now, they didn't give the money kept coming in. They might have had a firmer hand on the tiller. They could have been more. They could have been more Roman Abramovich and interfering and sacking the manager every 6 months. Well, maybe that would have been the thing.
They haven't invested in the stadium or the facilities or the infrastructure. Like, and I don't know how much impact or input they have in terms of transfers and pushing. You know, like Ronaldo was signed at a time for the second time when publicity around the Glazers was at a bit of a low.
A load of Man United fans were like, how could this possibly be a bad thing? It's got one of the world's best strikers coming in to mentor Mason Greenwood and all the rest of those young strikers. It's going to be massively beneficial for them, isn't it? That was the narrative that we got fed by all the Man United fans.
Most of them. And
were you not happy when Ronaldo signed?
Well, I think most United fans were happy that he didn't sign for Man City, which was the threat.
So now, in retrospect, wouldn't you actually love if he'd gone and wreaked havoc for Pep's Man City? I don't know how interested Pep was. I don't know what
he might have wreaked havoc in another way. He might have been brilliant.
He wouldn't.
Really, with that team around him?
He wouldn't.
Getting handed goals on a plate.
Okay, grand, maybe. But the point is that the Glazers are easy for everybody to blame, but there are other things that have been chronically wrong. The character of so many of those individuals who they signed, the character of so many of those players who just allowed the mediocrity to continue. Like,
United became a club that started signing strikers with a profile of Alexis Sanchez, Edinson Cavani, Odion Ighalo.
Was Alexis Sanchez not the best player in the Premier League when he signed for them?
But
was he not?
The profile was just not. I don't think he wasn't a Robin van Persie signing. Do you know?
He was very similar to Robin van Persie signing, like the top scorer at Arsenal for the last couple of seasons.
Attitude problems though, I don't know. I'm not blaming the Glazers for buying players like that. But I mean,
are you not though? Are you not giving everybody else involved in the club a free pass for what the Glazers did? Fine, okay. You can say that saddling the club with debt is a bad mechanism, but it's also a mechanism that's used all over the world for loads of different ways to finance the purchase of things. And the business made money and was run relatively well from a business perspective. We've got to move on. We'll come back to this.
Yeah.
Dave McIntyre is with us. Dave, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are you?
What do you think of the Glazers selling the club?
Well, I'm not 100% sure they are going to be selling the club. I think a lot of Manchester United fans have jumped the gun a little bit. They're planning, obviously, on changing the way they're looking at things, and whether that involves selling off a portion of the club, the portion of the percentage of the club they own, or whether they're going to sell it hook, line and sinker, I don't know. But I do know that with the debt that's involved and the valuation that they're likely to put on the club, it's going to be very difficult to find a buyer with pockets deep enough to actually come up with the goods. Because as we've seen in the recent past, given the valuation, I think their market cap is about 2.75 billion at the moment.
Yeah.
The talk is the Glazers are going to look for something closer to 4. So who's going to be able to finance that? Is it going to be another state? Is it going to be one individual that can afford that? I think that's going to be really difficult. It'll be something similar to Cristiano Ronaldo scraping around in the dirt looking for a Champions League club to take him during the summer. The short list, I would have thought, potentially will be very short.
It is pretty short. However, there's loads of consortiums always trying to buy American football clubs, and you can imagine now an American football club is a license to print money in a way that Premier League teams aren't the same guarantee, because you're not guaranteed Champions League football every year. But Man United are guaranteed Europa League football. And anyway, let's move on, because the World Cup is on, and we've seen two of the greatest shocks that we're ever going to see. So what have been your standout highlights so far?
For me, and nobody saw this coming, that Saudi Arabia would be the feel-good story of this World Cup. But look, here we are. The second half of that game against Argentina was spellbinding. It really was. Not just the manner in which they came back from behind to go in front, but the way they defended in the last 25 minutes was, if you were a Saudi Arabia supporter, if you're an out-and-out defender watching from home, if you can recall those back-to-the-wall performances like Ireland produced at Giant Stadium, for example, against Roberto Baggio and his pals in 1994. That's the sort of performance that their defence in particular turned in the last 25 minutes. The amount of blocks, tackles, guys covering 60 metres to harry somebody into a mistake. I can't recall a World Cup match where the crowd were as loud as the Saudi Arabia fans. Every block and tackle was just greeted like they stuck one into the top corner. I was absolutely enraptured by that last 25 minutes. It was just incredible to watch. So for me to take a small portion of what we've seen in the last week, that last 25 minutes for me was the highlight so far.
Are you concerned that that's the end of Leo Messi in Argentina? Do you think they can come back from this?
Well, look, people keep pointing towards Spain in 2010 as an example of a side that lost their opening game, went on to win it. I think the talk around this Argentina team was greatly overhyped coming in. They seem to be wearing their long unbeaten stretch like a badge of honour, despite the fact that they barely played any European teams. And outside of Brazil and Uruguay, there are very few sides of any real strength in the South American qualifying system. They did win the Copa America, I grant you that. That was a huge moment for Leo Messi and the overall picture of his career. But I look at their starting 11 and I don't see an awful lot that can hurt the opposition outside of Lautaro Martinez if he's given the right sort of ball. The rest of the players are not elite top-level European players playing at the top European clubs for whom there are a number of other clubs chasing every transfer window. Leo Messi, a lot of made of his form at PSG this season, where he doesn't have to do an awful lot apart from wait for the ball. He can drop a bit deeper if he wants, but he was smothered by Saudi Arabia. And in the last 25 minutes, you would barely know that the so-called greatest player of his generation was on the field. And this is against potentially the weakest team in the group outside of Costa Rica. So they still have to play one other really tough game. And I would fear for them now. I don't see them getting out of this group. I don't see them winning the two matches that they'll probably need to do to get out of the group. They created very few chances in the second half. First half, yeah, a couple of marginal offsides away from the game being put to bed. Would have been a very different story then, I grant you that. And they probably could have gone on to win by 5 or 6. But the dent that their confidence would have taken here, wouldn't surprise me now if they actually failed to win the two games, maybe get one win and limp out, as we saw Gabriel Batistuta's side limp out in the 1990s. It could be a similar story to that. It would be a rather ignominious end to Leo Messi's World Cup journey in what is his 5th World Cup. But he's in his mid-30s now, and he's not able to affect games the way he used to. He's not able to take a game and carry it on his own shoulders like he used to, because he's just not the force he once was.
Well, isn't the whole point that you don't get to write your exit of glorious triumph at the World Cup? Like, very, very few sports people ever get to do that. And for Messi, it was probably 4 years ago when he still was something close to his absolute peak, when he could put the team on his shoulders when he needed to, and they ran into the buzzsaw of Kylian Mbappe, and that's the passing of the torch that we saw at that stage, and Mbappe is still the best player in the world.
Yeah, I agree completely that 4 years, maybe 8 years ago was. But even then, Ger, do you recall a World Cup that was dominated by Leo Messi, where we keep comparing everything to Maradona in 1986, a guy that just took the tournament on his own and showed everybody why he was the best player in the world. Now, the rest of that Argentina side in Mexico was probably a little underrated because they were so dominated by one of the greatest players we've ever seen. But if you go through that Argentina team, it was littered with really brilliant footballers. And I'm just not sure that Messi has had that around him when other teams have managed to stifle him a little. And that's very much to the fore with this Argentina team. You're looking at Angel Di Maria in his mid-30s. He had an appalling game the other day, and he wasn't taken off at halftime, which he should have been. His end product was virtually nil, given this is a player who's had more assists than any other for PSG in their club's history. He was an absolutely phenomenal crosser of the ball and created so many opportunities for his teammates over such a long period of time. But you saw that he is half the player he used to be. And if Di Maria is in that Argentina team as a starter, trying to feed an attacker in Leo Messi that's also in his mid-30s, I think that tells you a lot about the lack of depth that they have in their numbers. And it's one of the reasons why when Scaloni was looking behind him at his bench, there was very little, if anything, that he felt he could call upon.
How much, Dave, can you read into the big teams winning their first game handily? Like Ger mentioned, France, of course, Australia weren't exactly the dominant opposition that maybe they're going to face the remainder of the tournament. Same for England against Iran, and similar for Spain last night against Costa Rica. Like, can you read into any of those results and performances and maybe say one of them stands out above the rest?
Well, I think England scoring as many goals as they did is going to relieve an awful lot of the pressure on them, and it just gets them off to the best possible start. Gareth Southgate was able to make changes and get as many minutes into as many players as he could. So 16 guys felt they were part of the World Cup already, and the fact that Harry Kane didn't score and they still managed to score 6, and in saying that Harry Kane was able to contribute to as many of the goals as he did, I think that'll be huge for them. But a lot of it is down to the start that you get in the first half. And this is where Argentina are the exception to the rule, because they got the start that they were looking for. They got the penalty, which was dubious, and they found themselves one up and dominating the game, which is exactly where Scaloni would have wanted them to be at that particular moment in that match. They didn't kick on. whereas England got their goal and kicked on. We saw France overcoming that early deficit against Australia and kicking on and getting the goals that saw the game put to bed before the opposition could really start generating some belief that they were in this and there was something in the game for them. And it's why I look at the game like from Saudi Arabia's point of view, as the longer they were in that game, suddenly they believed in what they could achieve. Japan, it was the exact same situation, found themselves behind, but they were in it long enough for them to continue to believe that there was something in it for them. And the key theme for me this week, outside of France demolishing Australia, has been a very obvious narrowing of the gap between the continents, between Africa and Asia in particular, and Europe, because I think we saw the kernels of that in Russia in 2018, but we didn't get the shocks over a 90-minute spell that we've got this time around. There are so many players playing for countries like Senegal, Morocco, Japan, that are playing in the top leagues in Europe, week in, week out. They're playing in the Champions League, they're playing in the Europa League. And that is a higher level than the World Cup. Let's face it, there are very few teams in the World Cup with 7 or 8 world-class individuals, where you can pick out a number of clubs in the Champions League that you could argue do have 7 or 8 world-class individuals in them. And these players, when they get together in camp for 3 or 4 weeks and they manage to put together a game plan, they don't fear what in the past they might have been coming up against in the World Cup. And it's why the teams like Argentina, like Brazil potentially today, like Germany as we saw, like Belgium last night, who were absolutely blessed to get out of that game with a 1-goal win. They're coming up against sides, and when they take to the field against them, 100% believe that they're able to get something out of the game. And when you couple that with the fact that the top sides have had a week to prepare, unlike other World Cups where they go into, say, Russia, or in 2014 in Brazil, they've had 3 or 4 weeks in a camp together to rest their limbs, to get themselves into what the game plan is going to be. The manager can implement the tactics. These top managers for the top European countries haven't had that time. So you add that into the mix, and I think we're seeing a trend that's going to continue into the next 10 or 15 years, that the so-called lesser continents, so-called countries from those continents are getting stronger and stronger because they're all playing in Europe, they're all playing in the Europa League and Champions League. And the 2 huge shocks that we saw this week, I think, are going to be repeated over the next decade.
And over the next week or so?
I really hope so, because when you've no skin in the game, as we don't, obviously, with the Republic of Ireland not being involved, you sit down to watch a World Cup game for exactly what we saw this week. And I was gripped yesterday watching the second half of the Japan-Germany game. And this sense of freedom that the Japanese played with in that second half. And those 2 second halves, I've already referenced the highlight being the second half of the Saudi game. They're the most enjoyable portions of the tournament for me so far. So I really hope, Ger, that you're right and we see another 2 or 3 of these. And I think we will, because if anything, what the Japanese and the Saudi Arabian players have achieved is the opportunity to embolden the other teams. And you sat down, you watched the way that Canada started that game last night.
I was going to say, yeah, Canada, yeah.
Very few of those players would be, fans in this part of the world would be familiar with them, apart from some of the European-based players, you know, the exceptions being Junior Hoylett and Alphonso Davies and those guys. But there was 5 or 6 of that starting 11 that a lot of people would not have heard of before, and yet they ran the legs off an ageing Belgian side. Would they have settled for maybe trying to keep things a little more compact, keep things tight for the first 20 minutes if Saudi Arabia and Japan hadn't achieved what they had in the previous 2 days? Maybe that was always going to be their belief, but perhaps not. Perhaps they see what's going on in the group stage, the dynamic that's already at play in Qatar, and they're starting to think, well, if they can do it, why can't we? Look at this Belgian defence. You've got Vertonghen and Toby Alderweireld in their mid-30s. And Witsel protecting them in his mid-30s. There's no reason why our youth and exuberance can't really take it to them. And if they had a decent striker, they would have been 3 or 4-0 up by the time the Belgians scored.
Yeah, or they've come up against the goalkeeper, who is going to end up being an Oliver Kahn style, one of the most important figures in the competition all the way through. And this Belgian team might not play to the level that we think they're capable of, but might not lose a game because they've got the best goalkeeper in the world.
I'm not debating with it that Thibaut Courtois is either the best or one of the best goalkeepers in the world right now. But honestly, Ger, you would have saved that penalty last night.
Some of the other ones, some of the chances, I don't know. I do think part of it is like, shit, this is Courtois, you know?
Yeah, an awful lot of it is that he's just an absolutely monstrous looking individual. And if you are taking a penalty against him, probably in your mind, it's like a golfer who's really struggling with his putting. The hole just looks incredibly small. Well, that goal must look very small when Thibaut Courtois is dancing around his goal line. But there was one save in the second half, a header heading for the top corner, that he just made look so routine. And he's an absolutely fabulous goalkeeper, yes. But the vast majority of the saves he made last night, you would absolutely expect him to make.
Right. You're not happy.
I think he's going to concede a few goals in this tournament against a team that are more clinical and have more talent up front than the Canadians.
I'm trying to find I'm just looking at the fixtures for today, Dave. I'm trying to find the next shock. Like, a lot of people are sleeping on, like, I know Brazil are the tournament favourites, and probably rightly so, but, like, are people sleeping on the Serbian team? Like, we know Serbia very well from the Nations League group, and look, they beat Portugal, and they're impressive. Lavic and Mitrovic, they can score goals. They're strong, good defensively as well. Like, I don't know. Like, is there a potential shock on the cards in this Brazil game later on? Opening game, anything could happen.
There absolutely is a potential for a shock, but let's be honest, Serbia beating Brazil later today doesn't compare remotely.
Yeah, of course.
Victories for Saudi Arabia and for Japan. This is a Serbian team that were absolutely brilliant in qualifying, topped their group, put Portugal into second place, had one of the best strikers in the world over the last 12-month spell in the team, who was scoring so freely, both in the Championship, now in the Premier League, and at international level. The big issue is Mitrovic fully fit? He didn't play in Fulham's last 2 Premier League games, and they are an entirely different side if he is not in the team. Now, he's going to start today, but whether he is as sharp as he has been over the last 12 months, if he is, he's the sort of striker that needs 3 or 4 chances and he'll take at least 2 of those. That's the level of efficiency that he has in front of goal at the moment. And I completely expect Serbia to create opportunities today, given that it is the first game. Now, it is a very good Brazilian team. They have a really solid defence. They've got Casemiro in front of them, and they've got a wealth of talent both on the field and on the bench. They do need to change things up, which is in stark contrast to Argentina. When they did need to change it, they just did not have the options. I think Brazil do have the options. I'm hoping this is going to be the game of the tournament in terms of 2 relatively good sides scoring goals against each other, like something like a 2-2 draw. But if you're looking for the next great shock, Serbia win today will not go down in the annals of history as a great shock. There probably isn't one there today. I mean, if Ghana beating Portugal wouldn't be a massive shock either. We probably do have to go towards tomorrow's games, and maybe looking at something like Ecuador beating the Netherlands for the next really intriguing one. But it won't happen today. But that's not to say that today, in terms of the overall quality, may not be the best day that we've had so far.
We obviously were reading lots into the Ronaldo body language and his arrival, and then they obviously have explained what happened, and I'm taking their explanation at face value. Shane is a conspiracy theorist.
I accept it now. I accept it. Yeah, Bruno is.
However, I'm absolutely overreacting to Casemiro's challenge on Richarlison in training that went a bit viral. I mean, I have once before seen somebody in a training session absolutely annihilate somebody, and it was Carlos Puyol and Patrick Kluivert at a Barcelona training session one time. We interviewed Kluivert afterwards. It smelled a little bit like he'd been on the booze the night before, and Puyol was letting him know it's unacceptable. I just thought Richarlison, it just doesn't look to me like he's one of those characters who you really want to live with week in, week out for 4 weeks. I think he might be a bit annoying, and I don't know. That's the only thing that, like, we never understand the tectonic plates of how well a team actually blends together. You'd have to say Brazil are absolute mad favourites to win this. France might give them a go, but their central midfield pairing doesn't look like it's going to be as strong as it needs to be, and maybe not their fullback situation either. So I'm just hoping that if Brazil aren't going to win it, it's because they fall into a conflagration of Neymar and Richarlison's making.
Yeah, well, look, we've seen so little Brazil up against European teams for so long now. So I think we just have to hold fire on all of these teams until we see them play. At least from a European point of view, we've seen the Nations League, we've seen the European Championships just 18 months ago. We've got a far greater sample size than we have with them. It's a Brazil team that couldn't get past Argentina last year at the Copa America final. So yes, they dominated qualifying. On paper, huge amount of great names, but Brazilian squads have gone to World Cups in the past with, on paper, an absolutely amazing, glittering squad of stars, and they have fallen flat on their face. So that could happen again this time around. I think today will probably end in a draw. Both of these teams will get out of their group, and it's just a question of then whether they can just click into gear and start playing to the potential that they undoubtedly have. But I haven't got an awful lot to say on Brazil as yet, outside of their potential, until we can really get a better look at them today.
All right, go and have a look at the Casemiro challenge. I think that's a shut up.
I thought it was a well-timed, cheeky little challenge.
Bit heavy for training. If he caught him, that's like...
Casemiro is the kind of guy that treats every training session as he would a match. I'd say he's a very similar kind of guy to a Roy Keane in that regard. And let's face it, if you were to put in a bone-crunching tackle on any member of that squad and get any more relish out of it, who else would it be only than Richarlison?
Yeah. All right, 15 minutes past 8, Dave, this morning. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Thanks, lads.
Right, FIFA and football fans, watch out for this. Virgin Media is hosting a game for Ireland, which will see Irish football legends David Myler and Stephanie Roach take on Ireland's top esports football players and Team Wild athletes at 5 o'clock on Tuesday, the 29th of November. So that's next Tuesday. The game will be live streamed on Twitch and it'll take place in Cork City FC's Turner's Cross Stadium, all powered by Virgin Media Broadband, 99.9% broadband reliability. After this short break, Andy Mitten live on the line.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
From the good
Neymar can push the ball between your legs because he just sees things.
to the not so good.
Hold on, this now affects football. We'll have to find another way to protest like it was that bad.
That's right, it's the 2022 World Cup. Off the Ball will bring you the best insight and analysis, as well as the big stories off the pitch from the World Cup in Qatar.
All 11 players from both sides walk on their arm back. Send us all off. Good.
Subscribe to the OTB Football Podcast feed now.
OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent mo.
Right, Andy Mitten is with us. Andy, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. All good, thanks.
We spent a long time parsing the body language between the former Manchester United colleagues arriving at Portugal training. I'm going to ask you a similar question about Casemiro. From what you know, does he like the old heavy challenges in training, or should I be reading into the fact that he nearly chopped Richarlison in two?
Casemiro trains as he plays. He did that at Madrid. Carlo Ancelotti loved him for doing that. Manchester United, in their pomp, trained as they played. He came in this season and he flies into challenges. And I don't think a lot of people have got a problem with that.
All right, so it's a sign of respect for Richarlison as opposed to...
Maybe. In his defence, if you look at his disciplinary record, it's incredible given the number of games he's played and the position that he plays. He's had very, very few bookings and red cards. I don't even know if he had a red card in Spain in all that time that he played there. I don't think he had a single red card.
Before we get into Manchester United stuff, obviously we have the record youngest ever scorer for Spain in a World Cup, just behind Pelé now, after the seven goals they scored last night. It's very early to be this good. That's the one kind of caveat. But are people getting carried away with the brilliance of this very young Spanish team?
Given the opponents, Spain were always going to be strong favourites. But Spain were strong favourites in the Euros and had a really stuttering start in the first couple of matches. So they've had a fantastic start. 5 of that starting 11 were Barcelona players, the youngsters you mentioned, Gavi, the youngest, Pedri. We knew a bit more about Pedri because he broke through a year before. They're good mates, but they're completely different players and people. So if you want to ask me about reckless madheads, ask me about Gavi rather than Casemiro, because he's a hot-headed young bull and very talented. The way he took that goal yesterday was so impressive for someone of his age. I'm a big fan of Pedri, the way he sees spaces, the way he exploits space. Poor Costa Rica. Within 3 minutes of watching that game last night, I just thought Pedri is just going to destroy you here. And that's what he did. To be considered world-class as a teenager, it's incredible, really, isn't it? And they're not playing in a vintage Barcelona team either. So they've got very good players around them, but this isn't the Barca of a decade ago under Guardiola. It's still a team coming together. I really, really like Luis Enrique. I liked him a lot as a player, a lot as a manager, a lot as a person. I've been fortunate enough to interview him face to face. He does very few interviews. I sat in a bar with him for 90 minutes, one of the best interviews I've ever had. Got a lot of admiration for him. When he finished playing football, he took off by himself. He went to Glasgow, he went to Liverpool, he watched the derby games. He stood on the Kop. He just bought a scarf, not Liverpool one, I hope, and just travel around the world. He's his own free spirit, but he's a very, very good manager. There's an excellent team spirit in the Spain squad, and I think they would be among the favourites. There's probably 4 or 5 teams who could win the World Cup, and Spain would be one of them.
That's the best part about this, isn't it? That you look at the Spain team and you can pick holes in the age profile of some of their defenders or in the youthfulness, that they're just a little bit inexperienced, but actually blend it together in a World Cup over 3.5 weeks. If they all get on and somebody makes a last minute block or somebody misses a sitter in the opposition, suddenly you're world champions. And that's on the cards for, I would say, 4 or 5 teams, which makes it one of the most interesting and open World Cups we've ever had.
Yeah, it does. And Luis Enrique has been a winner, and Spain, they've won the World Cup. They got the pressure of never winning anything off the shoulders in 2010, and these players grew up, and some of them played within that. Sergio Busquets played in that team. One thing I like about Luis Enrique, he's not afraid to upset the mainstream view. Quite famously, picked very few Real Madrid players. That's not because he's got a problem with Real Madrid. He played for Real Madrid. He was a great Real Madrid player. The fact that he went from Real Madrid to Barcelona as a player just shows what he's like. I will do whatever I want. Played with Kevin Moran, by the way, when he was at Sporting Gijón. Kevin was coming to the end of his career. Luis Enrique was 16, 17 years old, great young player. And the two of them both got on. With the media, is quite interesting. He's decided to do a live stream himself. He doesn't like the Spanish media. I always remember when I went to his house and I walked with him, and he said, I don't do many interviews. I don't like talking to the Spanish media because if I do one, I've got to do the other, and they always twist the words. I felt very privileged, actually, to get an interview with him. I got lucky. I wrote to him and he wrote back to me. I wrote to him in Spanish. He replied to me in English. And I think he liked the idea of managing in England, and we spoke about that. But I think he's a top manager. I actually hoped that he would get the Manchester United job after Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Ralph Rangnick. He was my favourite. I'm absolutely happy with Erik ten Hag. But Luis Enrique, who United were totally interested in, he always had the World Cup. His contract finishes after the World Cup, but he was never going to walk away from Spain in a World Cup year, and I respect that.
It's going to be very interesting to see. I think they've one of the youngest age profiles, if not the youngest, is the third youngest, and so you can see him taking this job on. But at the same time, as you said, he's a man who is singular, and so he could easily walk away, especially if they win. Let's move on to the Manchester United situation. A lot has happened. It's been quite the week. The coincidental timing of the Ronaldo announcement and the Glazer story, and the statement coming out from them, I think has sent Manchester United fans into a bit of an overdrive. What's your understanding of when the Glazers actually made the decision to sell the club? Does it trace back directly to the end of the European Super League, or certainly the suspension of the European Super League plan?
Yes, because they wanted to join the European Super League. They saw that as another revenue stream, increased revenues. And after that, they came out under a lot of pressure. They backtracked. They basically admitted that they'd not invested enough into the stadium, that Manchester United needed serious investment, spent a lot of money on players over this summer, maybe too much money, maybe eating into next year's budgets, maybe overpaid for players like Anthony, and it's sort of showing like it's the signings were good under Erik ten Hag. Manchester United have been good so far this season, not great but good, sufficient, passing the test so far. But the biggest story is the ownership of the club, and everything that they've done, for better or for worse, and they've done a lot of good things as well, or the club have, it's always been under the cloud of the Glazer ownership. Very unpopular with fans. Always have been since that highly leveraged buyout, very controversial takeover in 2005. My understanding is they've basically looked at what Chelsea went for. They've seen Liverpool go to market. They've seen the number of people who were prepared to bid for Chelsea. This wasn't speculation. These were hard bids. And Manchester United are far bigger than Chelsea. And United need investment, infrastructure. And there's another factor, and that's how can anyone go up against teams which receive a form of state funding? It's almost impossible. So if you look at the best case example, Liverpool done really well, recruited well, new training ground, expanded Anfield sensibly, that's continuing, excellent manager in Jurgen Klopp. They've done miles better than Manchester United. But even they, how can they go up against Manchester City or Newcastle United or Paris Saint-Germain? It is almost impossible for anybody. So any potential suitor for Manchester United will also have to take that into account. This idea that, okay, the Glazers have gone, someone new's going to come in and everything's going to return to normal, I think that's a bit far-fetched. The football has changed an awful lot since 2005 when the Glazers took over Manchester United.
Can we look into the fact that Liverpool are up for sale as well at the moment, Andy, as a factor? Because, I mean, United probably twice the value in terms of, between 6 and 8 billion when or if they do sell the club. But is there something there, or are the Glazers trying to almost lure potential suitors from Liverpool over to United? There's the fact that they're one of the biggest clubs in the world, the American interest, there's talk of Amazon and Meta and Jim Ratcliffe as well in Britain. But do you see that as maybe a point as well, that the fact that Liverpool are already up for sale means the Glazers had to act?
Could be. I'm not sure Manchester United are twice as big as Liverpool. Bigger. Liverpool are huge. Manchester United and Liverpool are the two biggest clubs in England by a long, long way. You only have to see that where you live. I could go into any town, village or city and there would be pretty equal numbers of Manchester United and Liverpool fans. And then the rest, whether that be Chelsea, Arsenal, Manchester City, they're a long, long way behind. And that's not forgetting the people who support the local teams as well. So if Liverpool were half the price of Manchester United, that would be a very good price for Liverpool, because Anfield's going to hold 61,000 very soon. It's almost done. Old Trafford needs a serious redevelopment doing. Liverpool arguably have got a better team than Manchester United. But United are massive. They're both massive. I was in Scandinavia last weekend. It's United and Liverpool. 46,000 paid up members of the Scandinavian Supporters Club for Liverpool. I think it's 42,000 for Manchester United. I think the next one's 14,000. You'll get similar figures all over the world. And I know if teams are successful, they attract new fans. And you will see Manchester City shirts wherever because they've been a successful team. I think there's a sense of, with the Glazers, cash out now. They'll make a vast, vast profit on their initial investment. That makes me sick, if I'm honest. But they've also been incredibly smart. They've seen an opportunity. Everything they did was legal. Unethical in my eyes, but legal. And they expanded Manchester United's revenues. They did some things which were very simple to monetize that global support, but others had not done it beforehand. I remember being in India in 2009 and seeing a billboard with a branded vodka drink and all the Manchester United players around this drink at a time when Manchester United were world champions. And I just thought, you clever so-and-sos. And what they've done, rather than go to emerging economies and try and sell copies of the official Manchester United magazine or replica shirts, which they struggle to do. There was all kinds of supply line issues, all kinds of counterfeiting issues. I remember being in Thailand in 95 when the club were there, and every copy of the Man United magazine, which was flying at the time, was a fake one. So what the Glazers did, they went to the big established companies in those countries and said, do you want to align your brand to us for $1 million? Got the money in the bank. So simple when you think about it, but no one was doing it beforehand. And they divided the world up geographically. And the next thing, they had Chilean wine partners. They courted these companies in a really smart way. If you were the chief executive of a Chilean wine company, you received out the blue this beautiful box with a Manchester United shirt in and a football in and your logo in the middle of that. And that could be pretty attractive, maybe when United were a better team.
Yeah, that's the bit that is difficult, I think, for some Manchester United fans, Shane in particular here, to look, you make the point that it's relatively simple, and probably some other American franchises were doing this and they looked at that and they thought, we can monetize this. That's how these big businesses work. They're like, this big audience, what can we actually sell to them that will allow us to make more money? And it's grim when you're a football fan to think of your support being commodified like that. But it was part of that globalisation trend at the time. And I'm not giving them credit for that, but I am saying that that's like whoever buys Manchester United and takes over next will find that their commercial arm is incredible at generating money. And if it's somebody who has loads of money already, the likelihood is that will get reinvested. But if it's somebody else who comes in and decides to load the club with debt, they'll still be able to do that again. And that's why the uncertainty exists over what's coming next, I suspect.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of positivity among Manchester United fans with that announcement that they're prepared to sell, because they're despised. They're absolutely despised. And I can totally understand that why. I remember the protests in 2004, 2005, thousands of Manchester United fans outside the ground, and they've never really gone away. They've ebbed and flowed. That should never have been allowed to have happened, that takeover. That buyout. Football clubs are not like normal businesses, but it was allowed to happen. I remember going to Whitehall with other United fans to see representatives of the British government, October 2005. They made us a cup of tea and biscuits and said, we're awfully sorry, and yes, we understand where you're coming from, and we'll write a strongly worded letter. Nothing at all changed. With the commercial stuff, I don't have a massive problem if Manchester United have a Chilean wine partner. I'm more concerned about issues like ticket prices, ticket allocations, Old Trafford, training facilities. I don't mind if the Chilean wine partner pays for a new training ground or an expanded training ground. I've got no problem with that at all. For me, with the Glazers, the bigger issue in the first decade was fastly rising ticket prices. They surged between 05 and 010. Again, to be fair, they've barely gone up in a decade, and pretty similar with other clubs as well. So they've not put the foot in it, like at Liverpool with that famous £77 ticket. And I got someone a face value ticket for a recent Man United game, £37. He said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah." "What, is this not a joke?" "No, it's £37. Whoa. The problem is getting them tickets. That's why Old Trafford needs to be bigger. So commercially, that's the way football has gone. As long as the match-going fans are being treated with respect. I don't have a huge problem if there's going to be a peanut partner in the Philippines. I really don't.
Andy, the Glazers have appointed this Rain Group as their financial advisors to handle this deal, the same group that looked after the Chelsea sale. I guess the difference in the Chelsea sale was there were sanctions and with it being Abramovich, and they had to get a sale done by a certain deadline. Do you expect this one, if it goes through, to kind of be more protracted, dragged out, and for this to go on for quite some time?
It could do. I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to speak to people today about that. I don't think anybody knows the answer to that. We don't know how many suitors there are. We don't know what they're asking for. People might go to them and say, "We're prepared to pay this," and the Glazers might have to an inflated price for their trophy asset, a profit-making asset, albeit one which is now in debt and needs investment. The share price surged with the announcement of this news, so that shows how the market feels about Manchester United, feels that there's future growth in football. I think the Glazers' ideal scenario is a bidding situation, which you had at Chelsea. From a fan's perspective, we need far better owners than the Glazers. Supporters have got to be at the heart of what Manchester United do, and I don't want to sound idealistic there and unrealistic. They should be. Communication's improved a lot with fans. Been some good changes at Old Trafford. The Red Army in Stretford End is a good thing. Things like drink prices. United were very good in lockdown, didn't furlough the staff like other clubs. Loads of good sort of micro projects going on, but always under the cloud of the Glazer ownership. I think the idea of Sir Jim Ratcliffe owning Manchester United, is a Mancunian, grew up two miles from where Newton Heath were formed in 1878, would be popular among fans. But again, he's not got where he is by being a benevolent, kindly gentleman. He's been ruthless as well. And investors are going to almost certainly want to see a return, which means that dream of some form of fan ownership it remains a difficult one to achieve.
Yeah, it's probably unlikely at this stage, although it wouldn't be impossible if a group was to emerge and try and raise money. Like the fans could borrow, could find the markets to lend them the money if they were being bankrolled by some former players, for example, if there was a consortium that was led that way. But that's kind of probably pie in the sky, although I'm sure some of the former players are thinking about it. We have seen in the US ownership groups emerge which have like a bunch of competing, so Jay-Z is apparently part of a group with Jeff Bezos that are interested in the Washington Commanders, even though they're not actually for sale yet, but they will be. So we don't know what's going to happen. There could be a city-state who are looking at Manchester United and go, well, I'd much rather have that than, say, Paris Saint-Germain, or maybe I'll have them both with a separate arm of this country owning Paris Saint-Germain and Manchester United. All of this is still on the table, I suspect, at the moment.
Yeah, and I don't think all of it will be popular either with Manchester United fans. Manchester United don't need anyone, actually. The club's big enough to stand on its own 2 feet. They don't need a benefactor. They don't need to be an arm of a city-state. But once them shares went to market in 1991, anybody could buy them. Do you know the value of the club at that time? £38 million. And the share offering wasn't taken up sufficiently by fans and had to be underwritten. I can't believe I'm saying that now. There were mitigating factors at the time.
I remember doing a piece on the share value around the year 2000, 2001, and at that stage, the shop in Dublin, Arnott's, was quoted on the Irish stock market, and it was more expensive than Manchester United. So you would have had to pay more to buy Arnott's, which is a shop, than you would have had to pay to buy Manchester United. And obviously that's what JP McManus and John Wagner spotted, and they bought into the club and sold out at like a nice, neat, tidy profit to the Glazers. I do wonder what life would have been like maybe if they'd given Alex Ferguson a share of the stud fees for the Rock of Gibraltar and everybody was still together.
Yeah, the Rock of Gibraltar and Ferguson's role, that's another conversation there. Football clubs, for all their profile, I remember reading a stat a decade ago that big Premier League football clubs have a similar revenue to a large single supermarket. So they're not actually that big a business, but they're growing and becoming quite big. And there are more profitable ways of making money. However, what FSG and what the Glazers have done have shown that it can be extremely profitable for them. If they sell out in the billions, then it's way, way more than the hundreds of millions they borrowed money on and put money in themselves.
Yeah. There's also a possibility that they're bought by a company. So Disney have just got a new CEO. There's talk of them trying to survive, to buy Netflix. Like the market capitalization of those, I was looking that up, is 127 and 179 billion. So they could easily, it could easily be, Shane mentioned Meta, like not beyond the bounds of possibility that somebody goes and says, okay, actually this makes perfect sense for my business. There's loads of video, it's endless content. We'll distribute that exclusively on our platform. We'll drive subscriptions through that way, and the business will continue to make all the money that it makes through sponsorship, advertising, bums on seats, and prize money. Like, would something like that be like slightly weird, but also more acceptable than being owned by the Saudis, for example?
Depends how it's presented and what it's going to be. When Sky tried to take over Manchester United in 1998, partly for the reasons that you said, there were a lot of objections from Manchester United fans, and that was stopped by the Monopolies and Mergers Commission. So times have changed again. It's got to be a realism here. It's got to be better than the Glazers. I don't like the idea of the club being saddled with debt and Manchester United paying £1 billion out in interest payments, as has happened in the last 17 years. Just makes me angry thinking that takeover was ever allowed to happen. Equally, some of the other vultures, opportunists, are not the most edifying, and equally they've not made the money by being kindly and soft in business either. It's a hard world out there. I'd be interested to see who comes forward, what they've got to present to the fans. And if you saw at Chelsea, they were putting their proposals forward and saying, we're going to do this, we're going to engage with fans like that. It's got to be more than tokenism. Manchester United and every football club needs protecting to stop what has happened with the Glazers happening again.
Andy, good stuff. We'll let you go. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
Thank you.
It's Andy Mitten giving us his thoughts there this morning at 8:40. If you want to get in touch, you can get us on WhatsApp 0879 180 180. That's the WhatsApp number. or you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. And we're brought to you live each morning with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent mow. You can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. John Duggan, good morning to you. How are you?
Ger and Shane, how is the form?
Pretty good. World Cup's in full flow.
It is. It's every blade of grass that I'm seeing at the moment. So the circadian rhythms are challenged, but it's the World Cup. Brazil-Serbia is going to be great, lads, this evening, 7 o'clock start in Qatar. I don't even know where these stadiums are. I just say Qatar. I don't say wherever they are, Lusail or wherever. But what are we going to see from Brazil? Well, a lot of division in the country, obviously with the election. Interesting that Neymar was back in Bolsonaro, and there's arguments over the jersey and the Brazilian FA wanting to depoliticise the jersey. The Canary Yellow, which I might buy actually one of them tomorrow.
Looks nice.
I've been to Brazil a couple of times. I've got some Brazilian friends. I might buy the blue one because they're my pick for the tournament. So
the blue one is the best. I mean, I know the traditional one is amazing, but the blue one is like, oh yeah. Yeah,
big time. So Brazil, what is he going to do in terms of the tactics? Obviously, you've had Tim Vickery talking about it on the show. Is he going to play a 4-1-4-1? I think Richarlison will start. Neymar, you've got Vinicius Junior and Rafinha possibly in the wing positions. Lucas Paqueta has generally been playing most of the Brazilian matches. Casemiro will be probably the holder. Will Thiago Silva play? You'd have to expect so as the captain, whether he should or not. And obviously Alisson in goal. I think with Serbia is, I think they're better than they were 4 years ago. We obviously know them through the group for the Republic of Ireland, but they've got a real cult hero in Dragan Stojkovic, possibly the best player Yugoslavia's ever had in the contemporary era, and now Serbia, who've never got to the last 16 of a World Cup. When you consider what their neighbours Croatia have done, it's an interesting stat. Alexander Mitrovic, I think, is fit. Dusan Vlahovic, Luka Jovic, lots of attacking players that are talented. Dusan Tadic obviously is very good with the assists. So it'll be a fascinating battle, because I was at the game 4 years ago in Russia and Brazil just completely dominated Serbia. But we just don't know, given what we've seen with Argentina and Germany so far in this tournament, what can happen.
I've seen a lot of people kind of touting, if Brazil do go all the way, Casemiro is a potential player of the tournament. I think people are sleeping on Fred, lads. Fred will, in all likelihood, in that 4-2-3-1, be the guy sitting beside Casemiro. And I mean, Fred's a guy that follows instructions to the T. Of course, plays with Casemiro at club level now as well. I don't know. We've been kind of chatting this morning, John, about Serbia being like, it could be one of those games that there is a mild upset, because if Serbia were to get a result, it wouldn't be the greatest shock. We've seen what they can do in Ireland's group in the Nations League.
Brazil haven't lost a World Cup group game since 1998, which is against Norway. I think a lot of the possession is really, really important, and how you use it. We saw that with Spain yesterday. Now, they were playing a team that were completely inferior to them, but they had 82% of the ball, and it's how you use that possession and dominate with the ball with that possession that I think is going to be very important. So Switzerland and Cameroon, 10 o'clock this morning in the same group, Group G. The Swiss have been very solid and cohesive, and very much about the collective. Do they have a striker? I'm not so sure, but Granit Xhaka has played well. Fabian Schär, you got Emmanuel Akanji, obviously of Manchester City as well in there. So Cameroon, hard to know what they're going to produce. They lost in semi-finals of the African Nations Cup, and since 1990, when they wowed the world, they've been pretty average at World Cups. They got Rigobert Song managing them. And then we got Uruguay, South Korea at 1 o'clock today. I think Uruguay are a team that everybody's fascinated to see how the blend of experience and youth is going to go, with Nunez and Valverde, really exciting players. And you have the old stagers like Cavani, Suarez, Godin, Muslera, so that'll be interesting. Their new manager, Diego Alonso, he's won 7 of the last 9 games with them. So that'll be fascinating. Heung-min Son is going to be fit for South Korea. Can they do it? Japan? Probably unlikely. And Portugal, Ghana at 4 o'clock, Ronaldo. So
everywhere you look, there are good narratives.
Absolutely. Portugal are a very good narrative. Once again, the question mark is with them, are they as good as they could be with the players they have? When you think about them, go through like Ruben Diaz, João Cancelo, Bernardo Silva of Manchester City, Bruno Fernandes, all these younger players like João Paulinho is playing so well for Fulham, Nuno Mendes, Vitinha, Rafael Leao, like they've really quality players. But can they be a team at this World Cup, and will Ronaldo be a cloud? That's an interesting question, you know.
Ghana have had a poor enough 2022.
Yeah, like they lost to Comoros at the Africa Cup of Nations. They've got Chris Hughton now in the backroom team. That's the Irish link. Got Tariq Lamptey, Mohamed Salisu there, could feature. Thomas Partey, obviously their star player. He's playing well for Arsenal at the moment, the IU brothers. So a lot going on, lads. Yesterday, thought Japan were brilliant in the second half. Obviously Spain now, hard to really know how good they are, but going to have to bypass that midfield to beat Spain.
Pedri and Gavi just complement each other so well.
Yeah, you just got to disrupt them, don't you? What else? Morocco, I think, could trouble Belgium. I think Belgium were ordinary last night. So I think Morocco-Belgium would be an interesting game. And Canada-Croatia, I think Canada were quite naive. I don't know why Jonathan David didn't take the penalty. I don't know why Alphonso Davies took the penalty, but Belgium, I don't think, are going to make any waves at this World Cup. So that's the vibe, folks, really. That's what's going on.
How are you basing your day? So 10, 1, 4 and 7. Like how do you squeeze in a walk in between, bit of food in between, or how do you avoid one of the games? Obviously, you're working for a couple of the early
what's ending up happening is I'm watching, obviously, the game in here, and then I'm going home, and then I'm watching part of the second game, and then I just can't stay awake, and then I wake up, and I'm just doing stats the whole day anyway. So I'd end up, after 9 o'clock, I'd end up making sure that I've got the stats done for the next day, and then having all the lineups and stats done from the day itself. So it's just a constant whir, as it were, but it's a very exciting thing to be doing.
It's actually quite nice that the late game is 7 p.m. and not, it could be 8.
It could be.
Like, I think it makes a world of difference that it's an hour earlier. We get to almost unwind and not be too late to bed. I'm
just getting completely sucked into it. So I'd be going and doing a lot of research on players, and then I'd be just like going into Wikipedia and I'd type in 1978 World Cup and I'd type in 2002 World Cup, and I'd be going through what happened in the group stage and wondering, I've been going through Spain's record. The last time Spain didn't qualify for World Cup was 1974. You'd be like going through all these little pieces of statistics. Brazil have been at every World Cup since the very first one. They've never missed a World Cup. So you'd be just like picking up these little tidbits of stats and stuff, which is quite interesting. But for me.
Anything else going on, JD?
Well, Ronan O'Gara, has he been treated unfairly? It seems like he is. They're really throwing the book at him in France. Banned until February.
Yeah.
€15,000 fine. Seems a bit excessive for me.
Missing all the Champions Cup games. I guess the difference in France is that the managers, unlike over here, where the managers are up in the box, they're on the sideline in France. So there is that potential for hostilities and for tensions and for things to be said that can be quite clearly heard. So I guess he's a victim of his environment in some ways as well, Ronan. Like, he wears his heart on his sleeve. But 10 weeks, missing all the Champions Cup games seems fairly drastic. Obviously, we don't know what was said, but I mean, it's quite a substantial ban, isn't it?
It's obviously cumulative, so they ratchet it up every time you get done.
Yeah.
So looking forward to hearing what he has to say about it next time he's on.
Yeah, we have the OTB World Cup brief on our podcast network, folks. We're doing a daily look ahead, first thing every morning, to what's going on each day, so it's worth checking out. And also mark your card. We had a very good start to our racing slot with Katie Walsh last week. I tipped a winner, and she had one of our dad's horses, Ted, finished third at 9-1. So that's coming up tomorrow on the podcast network as well. We're looking ahead to Navan this weekend in the jump season, getting back into gear, and Constitution Hill will run for Nicky Henderson on Saturday in the Fighting Fifth Hurdle at Newbury. So plenty of stable tours, plenty of people getting their horses to follow for the year for the jump season as it gets back into gear. There's a meeting at Thurles today, so lots of whispers, lots of talk about, well, who's the superstar Willie Mullins' yard, and definitely worth following the podcast when we roll it out each week, the Mark Your Card podcast on the OTB network.
Yeah, the countdown to Cheltenham is underway.
Yes, it is.
It is. Right, also check out the Lunchtime Wrap today, which brings you all the latest sports news. It's with thanks to Deliveroo. Check out the app for some great matchday meal deals across the World Cup. Deliveroo, food, we get it. Up next, Matt Williams joins us on the line. First, have a look at this. New York Times journalist Jerry Longman joined Joe on last night's show to talk about the situation in Iran and attitudes towards the Iranian players staying silent during the national anthem against England.
The Iranian football team, known as Team Melli, has generally historically been seen to represent the people of Iran, not the government, but it's sort of the Iran of everyone's imagination. But now, given the unrest in the country, the team represents kind of the divisiveness of the country, not the unity of the country. And so, what you saw on Monday during the playing of the national anthem was actually a more complicated situation, I think, than appeared originally. So, there have been a number of people who believe Iran should not be at the World Cup. There are some who believe they should go and perform some act of civil disobedience, that kind of thing. So some people I appreciated, I think, that not singing the national anthem, not celebrating after either goal. Some activists thought it was too little, too late. And actually, in the crowd, while some people booed, some people also chanted "without honor," and it's unclear whether they were chanting that at the players because they didn't want them to be there, or just the idea in general of Iran being at the World Cup. We actually got reports that in a mall in Tehran, that people were cheering every English goal, and it's unclear exactly why, but perhaps some people have suggested that the worse the team does, the worse that the Islamic regime looks, or it just could have been just a kind of a protest against the team being there in the first place. But so the national team has been not singing the anthem at various matches before the World Cup, both the national team and also the domestic league teams, and they haven't been celebrating goals. So this, I think, was sort of viewed as sort of the least thing you could do, right? Or that you should do at least something, and that was sort of the least thing. Some people are demanding more. Okay. And as I said, some people don't want the team to be there in the first place.
You can hear that full interview on the OTB football feed and your podcast network. Some breaking news on how the man of the match, how did Kevin De Bruyne is holding it there, going, not really sure about this. And then did he say it or did he tweet it like, this shouldn't have been me?
He says, I don't think I played a great game. I don't know why I got the trophy. Maybe it's because of my name, which is a fair point. Colin has tweeted me to say FIFA man of the match is a public Twitter vote. Total nonsense, pure name recognition. That's a bit ridiculous.
Whether or not it's true, I believe it now.
I'm going to go with it. Well, even
Thibaut Courtois pretty bloody famous. Yeah. Like, man of the match in a Champions League final, won the game. Anyway, right. Yeah. We should have mentioned as well, Arsenal playing Juventus in the Champions League tonight in Turin. They're top of the group after 2 games, but obviously the big news is that Beth Mead did her ACL in the 3-2 home defeat versus Manchester United. They'll also be without Leo Williamson and their captain Kim Little as well, and their manager. They're coming up against their former manager too. So that is the Champions League tonight in Turin. A reminder, OTB AM brought to you with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent mo. You can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. Matt Williams is with us. Matt, good morning to you.
Good morning, Ger. Good morning, Shane. Good to be with you.
You've had an interesting week. Did you turn off your social media? Are you aware of the brouhaha?
I turned it off. But I have wonderful people like you reminding me all the time, Ger. So it's good of you.
Very good. So, what's your instinct now about the discussion that's happening around concussion and your take on it in particular?
Look, Ger. My point being, right now, leading the discussion on concussion is journalists and lawyers. With science last. We have to reverse that. Science has to come in front. That was my whole point. I didn't think Nick White should have returned to the field. My point was I am not in a position to decide if that's right or wrong. Now, that was it, and that's offended a whole lot of people. And look, if they're offended, I can't control that. But you're not qualified. I'm not qualified. The vast majority in the sporting community are not qualified to rule on this. We have to turn it to science, and we need really good science, not half-baked science that starts with a proposal that we're going to find a problem. Let's set out to find a problem, because we have to understand that in science, correlation does not mean causation. Okay, so in other words, just because you get some numbers you can't relate that back. I have had numerous concussions from the time I was a teenager until I was in my 30s. My generation was managed very badly. We were put back into the game straight away. When we were older, we usually consumed alcohol straight afterwards on the Saturday night, and then we were back in full contact on the Tuesday. I have skin in this game, but I will not have journalists and lawyers trying to tell us what the science is. That's my point.
Can I can we tease that out, because that's interesting, right? And I guess there's one other aspect to this that I think is important to just bring into the conversation, and that's the education of the general population. And so when people are watching at home, like, we probably don't have live access to the medical staff's conversations around what's happening. So I would feel like there is an onus on all of us as part of the entertainment industry to amplify some of the issues around this. And I think that's important. Where I'm not a scientist, but we have talked to a lot of scientists about the issues around this. And even if there's doubt about what we think, it's important sometimes to amplify that doubt in a responsible way.
Exactly. The trouble we have now is we have fear. So what do journalists want? And I'm not suggesting yourself or this program, but generally journalists want sensationalism, and that creates fear, right? And that has happened. There is huge fear in the community over this. This started with the movie Concussion. It's all moved down the track. From that fear, lawyers can come in and, really try and create some money from that fear. And in all this process, we haven't really got all the answers. People have made out I'm trying to say head injury is not real. I mean, that is just, that's tripe. That's not what I was saying. And I have never said that. If you read any of the articles I've written over the years in the Irish Times, you can see I am saying I'm totally understand that's the case. I am part of the story. I am part of that story. What I am saying is that the fear has overtaken what we need to do. Now, in the Nick White scenario, let's roll back a bit. Dave Parecki, the Australian hooker, in the opening 20 minutes, got a bang. We couldn't see what happened on the field, and he was removed. He failed his test and was removed from the game. The process worked. The science worked. The player was protected. Now, what happened with Nick White, as it transpired, was the match doctor. So remember, this is an independent doctor. Everyone started saying, as soon as he got injured, you could see the Australian physio talking on his microphone as if there was some conspiracy theory going on that they could manage to get him off. I mean, it's just, again, ignorance. He is talking to the coach saying, we're losing White, he's going off for a HIA, we need to get organised. And then you see Dave Rennie saying, we'll get the next player organised, let's get a replacement scrum half on the field. That's what that was about. As soon as Nick White walks off the field, he's handed to the independent referee. So what occurred was the independent referee was looking at Nick White tackling Mac Hansen where he hit the ground. They thought that was the injury. Now, it wasn't the case. He hit Josh van der Fleur's knee. So when he came off, he passed his HIA. So at what point do we, as rugby people, intervene into that science? Does dust the pitches make that right? Now the referee, the match doctor has said that he didn't see that, and subsequently that's moved. My whole point in this process is it has to be medical. Now people come and say, you can't be medical. Well, if it's not medical, what is it? Do we say it worked with Dave Parecki, but we don't want it? It didn't work with Nick White. We changed. So to me, it's a storm in a teacup about people jumping up and down about an error that a doctor made.
Okay, there's a lot in this, right? And just to spool back to the fear, and I mean maybe I'm biased because I'm in the journalism profession. I don't really believe that journalists gain much from fear. I'd have to say that the people we've spoken to, so we had Nobby Styles' son John Styles on, and his dad suffered dementia, and they think it's connected to football. Dawn Assel, Jeff Assel's daughter, has been on the show, and we're not generating fear by speaking to those people. We're trying to tell their stories where they don't believe that the sport of football in particular was responsible to their parents and their concern. Chris Sutton has spoken on the show as well about his dad and the concerns that he has for the concussions that footballers suffered when they were heading heavy footballs, and the fact that kids still today are practicing headers under 6, under 8, under 10, and we're not really sure of what the science is. I think to your point, the science hasn't fully caught up yet to prove causation. But there's a concern that heading the ball repeatedly might lead to brain injuries. And I think that's the grey area here, where if I'm a parent, I'm concerned that rugby seemed to get it right in one incident at the start of the game, but didn't get it right in the second incident. And if that was one-off, I'd say, sure, it's a storm in a teacup. But unfortunately, these bits where players are concussed and subsequently are removed and stood down, but yet they have been allowed to go back in, would suggest to me that the process isn't working. Either from the medical side or the science side or the common sense side, that whatever the coagulation of those bits are isn't working at the moment. And I think that's where the conversation could get to.
Ger, I think you're absolutely right with the head injuries in football and heading the ball in any sport. You know, like I was in Dublin last weekend and I saw kids riding around on bikes with no helmets. Like, head injury to children is most likely to occur on bikes or skateboards, horses, that sort of thing, where there is a considerable fall. But it's the accumulative effect of knocks to the brain. So yeah, look, I think we should, but personally, and again, you know, I certainly think we should stop heading the ball in junior football. There is a whole lot of things we should be doing. So that's one side of the story. And what's happened to Nobby Stiles and these guys, I know is true, because there's scientific papers. One of the first scientific papers written on this was way back in the 50s, and it investigated a whole lot of former professional soccer players in England that had dementia, and they were in homes, and they were from the 1930s, and they came up with the idea that it was from heading wet, heavy leather balls that they played with in those days, or the constant heading of the balls and head clashes as you went for the ball. So we know that historically that's the case, and we should do things to stop it. We are trying to stop those things in rugby. Now, in sport, if you're going to play sport, unfortunately things occur. So let's get to that point. It's how we manage it. Was the process that Nick White went through correct? Well, on certain aspects you could say it wasn't, because they missed the fact that his head hit Josh van der Fleur's knee, right? So we've got to say they missed that, that's for sure. But then he passes his HIA. That's where it gets complex. And then people say to me, well, HIAs, the HIA tests are not perfect. Okay, I'll accept that. But then what do you do with Dave Parecki, who fails his HIA? This all points to me, Ger, that we need to increase our vigilance. So there was a visual missing of Nick White, and we need to increase the science. The more we increase it, the more we protect the players, the better. But here is another important point. There was no malice in that on Saturday. On Saturday night. There was no way anyone was trying to game the system. There was no way people were we're trying to put him back on. That was false. There was a loophole in the system. And I will say, in rugby, in the defence of the doctors, across the season, they are getting the overwhelming majority of these cases right. There is a supreme caution now out there in rugby that there wasn't a decade ago. And I also have to say, in the defence of the doctors, I work with a lot of doctors in 4 different countries. I never met one that didn't put the welfare of his players number one. Absolutely number one. Was that an error? Well, obviously, looking back, some people, Nick White shouldn't have got on the field. In defence of the doctor, he passed his HIA. Again, where does that leave us? We can't have it both ways. We can't say the science works for Dave Parecki and it doesn't work for there. We've got to just follow the science and lead it. That's not going to be an easy journey. That's not going to be perfect. And there's an example on the weekend. But it's much better than journalists and lawyers leading it than having science last. We have to have science first.
Can you understand, I guess, Matt, why it was the story out of the weekend? Like, I suppose we talk about that word fear, and it often comes up. Parents of young kids, they're sending them out to play rugby. There is that fear of sending them out because of, the number of concussions in the game at the moment. Like, I guess since the weekend, can you see how the Nick White issue has been the story out of the match, as opposed to anything else that happened on the pitch?
Yeah, we made it the story. And I said that at the time. Andrew Trimble said it when we were on TV. He said, if we lead with this, we're going to make it the story. Sure enough, we did. And that's a shame, because it was a story, but we made it by televising it the story. There's no two ways about that. And look, rugby needs to front it up, and I guess rugby is fronting it up. But and this is my fear. Look, like kids in sport right now, we're not competing against football or basketball. This is not rugby against other sports. We're competing against apathy. We need children playing sports. We need children putting down devices. We need children turning off laptops, turning off TVs, going outside and being active, not to play for Ireland, not to win competitions, but to be healthy. We have an obesity crisis in society, Western society, absolute obesity crisis. I'm seeing kids in Australia at the age of 13 and 14 that can barely run because they're caught up in apartments, not getting out and doing stuff. That's the truth. I've physically seen that. And now on top of that, and then you have the social aspect of getting on with people, of communicating, again, of turning off phones. We need this for society. And we're putting fear into junior sport that shouldn't be there. Junior sport should be as safe as we can make it. And if I'm a professional rugby player, I sign up for it. If I'm a boxer, I step in that ring, I sign up for it. That's okay. It's your brain, you do what you want with it. It's your body, you do what you want with it. But we shouldn't be making it so fearful, because it's wrong. It's a lie to make it this fearful that parents are not wanting their kids to play junior sport.
Yeah,
that is the tragedy in this process.
I think you're talking there about the principle of informed consent. Really, I don't think 16-year-olds fully understand when they're signing up to head the ball or to play rugby what the long-term dangers are. The other thing I'd say about that too.
If I just interrupt you there, though, it's their parents. Their parents have to. It's not the kids I'm worried about. The kids want to play. It's their parents.
Well,
so we have to educate their parents.
I think that's exactly the point. I do think too that sometimes we need to intervene when players are making decisions in the immediate short term. Because if you ask a player,
100%.
like there was that survey done years ago. If I give you a gold medal now, but you're going to die in 10 years, how many athletes will take it? And at the time, the figure was off the charts. It was something like 80% of athletes were like, yeah, I'll take a gold medal. Of course I will, because that's their identity. And so many athletes you speak to in their 40s regret the level of commitment that they put into at the detriment of like relationships, personal development. So that's the bit where to go back to your point about the science. Like, what science do you feel we need to lead and to because like we do speak to the scientists, and in fairness, we had the guys from Mickey Collins from UPMC on, who was like, look, we think concussion is very treatable. We want everybody who gets concussed to get the right treatment, and 9 times out of 10 we're going to get them back playing the sport. Yeah. And that was a story that kind of shocked a lot of people, to hear somebody saying, I've dealt with literally thousands of concussions over a decade and we've had great outcomes in it. We covered that story, and we covered it really well. So we are offering the scientists who tell the positive outcome stories a platform as well. But I'm not sure that journalists having conversations about it is damaging to the sport or creating this climate of fear.
Ger, I can tell you that, and I don't listen to all the show. I follow your show at the station. I don't listen to all the. Obviously, you can't physically listen to them all. But I do know on a number of other platforms, BBC in particular, they do lead with some very troubling stories on it, and that has created fear in the community. Now, not every journalist and not every story, obviously. We're talking extremes here. There needs to be some balance. But the stories of saying, I don't want to be. Somehow I've found myself in this position where I'm almost talking against all of this, and I don't want that. I've been trapped into this myself.
Yeah.
And I will say, I thought we were coming on the show to talk about that.
Yeah. I know. It's just because
here I am. We spent 15 minutes talking about concussion, which I am not an expert in. I am not an expert. I am not the scientist to be talking about this. I'm a coach. I've had concussions. I'm highly interested. I've done my own little bit of research, and I observe society. If we come back to what we were saying, I encouraged my son to play rugby. I encouraged all my children to play sport. Now, he didn't love the game the way I loved it, and he has stopped playing. He had great fun. He has great friends, and he stopped playing when he was 19 or 20. That's his choice. But he is socially well adjusted. He is very healthy. He has a good, he's not obese. He's got a good physique, as in his healthy physique. He's good body weight. He's got a good picture about himself.
So he got the benefits of the sport, yeah.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm saying, Joe. I'm not talking about elite end sport. This is damaging people getting involved in community sport that are never going to be international players, that are never going to do. And I agree with your comments about elite end of sport. Look, to make it in the elite end of sport, you've got to be obsessed, and you've got to be. It's not a normal lifestyle. Steve Gerrard said once, to be a professional sportsman is a very abnormal, sports person is a very abnormal lifestyle. You have to be obsessed. You have to have a touch of the obsession about you. And I know I've got that in me, and it can be very dangerous. And when we talk to a lot of the guys when we retire, we all often speak about how obsessed and selfish you are. You have to be a very selfish person. Now, that's one end of society, and they're the people that make bad decisions about their health and brain injury. They want to get back, especially in rugby. If you're a 100-metre sprinter, that doesn't affect you. But that's why we have to protect them in rugby. That's where the science comes in to protect people. That's the discussion on Nick White. But the discussion on Nick White, unfortunately, is discouraging, or Nobby Styles, is discouraging parents allowing their children at 10 or 11 to go and play a community sport. That's the damage to me. That's the real damage, and we have to try and avoid that.
Yeah, and look, I suppose, not to relitigate that, I guess I would say having these conversations is forcing World Rugby into acting in a way that might actually end up making it much easier for parents to go, yeah, I trust that organisation, I think they're on top of it, and they're, in fairness to them, they're taking it seriously. You would say that part of them taking it seriously has been the fact that these cases are brewing. Certainly with the NFL, they weren't going to do anything until the players started, like in many cases, killing themselves and leaving their brains to science. So I know you're saying it shouldn't be the lawyers, but sometimes, unfortunately, society changes because the lawyers take a case, the case gets won, and everybody goes, maybe we should fix this to prevent ourselves from being open to litigation again.
Oh, gee, there's so much I want to say about the lawyers in the case.
Will we talk about the rugby?
We can't. I can't.
Yeah, fair enough. Will we talk about the rugby instead?
To finish, yeah, we will, mate.
Yeah.
To finish on this. So everyone is clear. Head injury is real. We need to absolutely look after people. That is the case, because I'm in that case. Second part is science has to lead it, and the third part is we are going to make errors on the journey. Saturday night, where Nick White, that can be conceived as an error, and we're still up there saying whether it was an error, because he passed his HIA. Nothing else. So we saw him bang his head. He passed his HIA. Dave Parecki didn't pass his HIA. So we still have more to do with the science to protect the players. That's the point. Not coaches, not journalists, not lawyers, scientists. And we need to listen to that science. Sorry, mate.
No, fair enough.
You dragged me into that, Ger.
I thought it was important to
run out some walls, but here we are.
Well, I did think it was important to give you an opportunity to.
I'll turn off my Twitter for another week.
Yeah, fair enough. I know. I look. I thought it was important that you get the opportunity to explain that, because there's been a backlash to your comments, and sometimes it's difficult to get the full breadth of your thoughts across in a short period of time. So, and I've no doubt you'll get sucked into writing about this over the next few months too. So I look forward to further thoughts. Either that or you're like, never again.
I'm not going near it, Ger. And I got to say to all those people that, threw things at me, look, you're more than entitled to your opinion. But anyone that starts talking against science in this, you're wrong, right? Anyone that goes against the science. And me too. If I've gone against the science, I'm wrong, and I'll go back. You've got to follow medical science, not anything else.
How did Ireland play over the 3 games? Will Andy Farrell be happy or a bit concerned about the patterns of play that emerged from games 1, 2 and 3? At the end of that, when he's going, okay, we're trending in a direction. Is that direction good, all good, a bit up in the air?
I've got to get my thoughts together now after going through all that. Mate, look, you can't finish the season being number 1 in the world without giving great praise and kudos to the whole organisation. The 12 months from November last year to where we are now has been a radical change, not a revolution, not an evolution. And after that radical change last November, the team has progressed and grown and developed and moved forward. It's been a superb 12 months. Only a loss to France and Eden Park against New Zealand. It's staggering. The one, and so we have to celebrate that, and we do have to praise everyone involved with it. The really interesting point where World Rugby is now, there's nothing between the top 10 teams. Now let's just look at last Saturday night's opponents, Australia, who are now ranked 8th, which is the lowest I think it's the lowest they've ever been in the world rankings. Now they've lost to 1, 2 and 3 in the world this season. They've lost to Ireland, France and New Zealand. New Zealand by 1 point, France by 1 point, Ireland by 3 points. There is nothing between the top 8 to 10 teams. There's a cigarette paper. On any given day, anyone can beat each other. Now, so what does that mean? It means Ireland have got nothing, cannot rest on their laurels. France are also on the 13 game winning streak. So that makes it, puts Ireland in a really good place, but there is absolutely no security in that place. Everyone around them is capable of beating them on any given day, which is wonderful for the game, wonderful for a World Cup year coming up, and really exciting for the next Six Nations, because it is exceptionally close and tight at the top of world rugby.
We've kind of touched on this week, Matt, since the weekend, and Jack Crowley has had to step in when Johnny Sexton was pulled out very late. Ross Byrne really stepped up with that kick late on as well on Saturday night. Do you think it's the case that heading into the Six Nations, we need those players, those understudies, to have had that experience of being on the pitch in big games? Like, should there be moments during the Six Nations where those players are given a chance? Johnny obviously won't want to step aside, but heading into a World Cup, you need to have that strength and depth to win.
Oh, absolutely, and that's been our fault at numerous World Cups. You only have to look, Ian Madigan had to step in against Argentina from memory. It was 2015. When or if Johnny Sexton, who without doubt remains at the peak of his powers, but his body is 37 years old. And if he gets injured at the World Cup, he'll be 37. If he gets a slight injury like he did on Saturday, what happens? What happens? That's in the warm-up before they play South Africa. What if it's in the warm-up for the quarterfinal? One of Ireland's great problems, it can be encapsulated in Joey Carberry's career, where he, up until last year, even though he had 32 caps, 30-ish caps, only 4 of those were against Tier 1 nations. And sometimes we're given the caps in the Six Nations against Italy. The only way you learn to deal with the pressure and learn to be on the big stage is to be on the big stage. And there's without doubt that helped Crowley. And I don't think he's the answer just yet, but he is a really promising player. He's a player of the future, and he did a really competent job in very difficult circumstances on Saturday. He will have learnt from that and grown and moved forward, which is really, really great, as did Ross Byrne coming on. So I still think we haven't seen the best of Ross Byrne on the international stage. He's superb with Leinster. If we just looked at provincial form, he would be on the bench every time, because he is playing superb rugby in that system. He just hasn't done it at an international level. So it is definitely good. McCluskey was great. O'Brien was great. Finlay Beelam's been fantastic for that. All those players that played across the series that got their chance against South Africa, to a lesser extent Fiji and Australia, they're going to stand us in great stead. Really, really good stead.
Matt, we'll leave it there. Good stuff. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Pleasure.
That's Matt Williams there giving us some thoughts this morning at 19 minutes past 9. If you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Now, Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of OTB. This festive season is officially here, so why not enjoy a shot of gingerbread goodness in your Braeburn coffee today, available at Apple Green locations nationwide. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio for you across the day. Cora Staunton is OTB Gold at 1 o'clock. Leaders' questions with Stuart Lancaster at 3. Competitive Obsession, we've just been talking about it. That's our retro panel at 4. And Brian O'Driscoll meets Issa Nasewa is our OTB Gold at 6. And the show is live tonight from Nathan, alongside John Giles as usual on a Thursday, plus Kevin Kilban checked in from Qatar, and plenty more besides. You can follow OTB across all our social channels and subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network for all the best in the latest sports content. Back after the very short break with the newly appointed Tipperary senior hurling captain Noel McGrath.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Koigig Pod on OTB Sports.
We should have played the ball around in the middle a little bit more. We were too quick to drop off 3v1. That's been a problem that we actually stopped against Scotland because Niamh Fahey stepped in to stop Caroline Weir.
Keep up to date with all the WSL action every Tuesday and subscribe to the feed in the OTB Sports app now. OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent mo.
It's 20 minutes past 9. I'm delighted to say we're joined by Tip Captain Noel McGrath. Noel, good morning to you. How are you?
Good, Ger. Now and yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. Is captaincy something that you've been looking forward to? Is it something you're going to enjoy, do you think?
Yeah, look, it's a lovely honour to be asked to do the job. And yeah, it's definitely something I'll be looking forward to. It's a big honour to captain your county or your club, and to be given the chance to do it for 2023 is a nice honour and something that I'll be looking forward to when the season rolls around.
Who were the captains, the best captains you would have played with coming through? Because you've literally had some of the best captains in hurling history, right?
Yeah, look, I suppose when I started, Conor O'Mahony was Tip captain for a year or two, and then Owen Kelly was captain in 2010, obviously when we won the All-Ireland. So that's not a bad start to have as a youngster coming into the panel with Owen Kelly as your captain. And yeah, like through the years, then there's been different captains, like as I suppose lads around my age that I've grown up with, who've been captains of different teams, and the Tip senior hurling team with Brendan Maher and Shane McCallan, I suppose, and Pádraig Maher. The three of them have captain Tip, and they're three lads that I would have looked up to all my career, I suppose, not alone just when they were captains, but yeah, like they were great lads to look up to, and great people to I suppose to learn from and to follow.
And do you think you'll take a little bit from all of them? Will you just try and do what it is that comes naturally to you yourself? Is it something you'll work on separately to your own game?
No, look, I think it's something that you just go with. You don't really change much, to be honest, Ger. I've been captain of my club a few times over the last number of years, and you just go about your business, and you train the way you always train. You work hard. And you put in the same effort that you do, no matter what title I suppose you have behind your name. So yeah, you just go with what's natural to yourself. It's a great honour, but at the same time, you have to go and perform on the training field and on match day when it comes as well. So yeah, look, I'll be looking to, I suppose, not to change too much of how I prepare and how I play over the next number of months, and I'm looking forward to, I suppose, helping any of the younger lads if they need anything, or anyone at all on the panel, I suppose, if they have any questions or anything that they need, and I'll be there to support them and support anyone that looks for any help.
Does it slightly amend, Noel, the way in which you have to behave in the dressing room? Like, do you have to be, as a result of that armband, more vocal? Do you have to kind of sit players down and deal with other things off the pitch as well, or how does it affect you in that regard?
No, look, I think, to be honest, as I said, you just go about your business the same way that you do. If there are little bits and pieces that need to be done as captain, I'll just take them on board and go with them. But I suppose the management team look after everything there, and they deal with any issues, I suppose, that players have, or any queries and questions that players have. And if anyone comes to me and anyone needs a steer in any direction, or help in any direction, or a bit of advice in any direction, I'm definitely there to help as well. But no, I think, look, at the end of the day, you lead by how you train and how you apply yourself, and that's something that I'll be doing. I suppose that I have done, I suppose, over the years, and it's something that I pride myself on, is how I prepare myself and get myself ready to train and to play, and that won't change, and that'll be something that I'll be open to do and going forward in 2023.
Liam Cahill named a 40-strong winter panel there last week for the upcoming month or two. You have the two younger brothers as well, John and Brian, named on the panel. Like, I mean, they're probably used to you being the boss at home. Does it affect them, the fact that you're the captain of the team now?
No, it doesn't. No, look, I suppose it's great to have the two boys there. But look, when we go training with either Lockmore, Castleiney or Tipperary, we're just three lads going in there to do your best, the same as everybody else. And it'll be no different next year. And look, I suppose there's a 40-man panel there, and plenty of new faces, which is great for Tipperary, and lads that are going to be putting their hand up and looking to get their place on teams and on panels, and that's the way it has to be. And it's great to see that freshness. And for me, I suppose, someone who's been around for a few years, like, to see all that coming in gives you a bit of energy, and it kind of re-energizes me and makes me have to make sure that I'm on my game every night I go in train, that I'm prepared every night that I go train. And that's how sport works. And I suppose that's the way top level sport and competitive sport needs to be, that you have new players coming all the time, and players with hunger and desire and looking to wear the Tip jersey. And I'm really looking forward to the challenge in 2023. I suppose 2022 was a disappointing season for everybody involved in Tip hurling, and so look, I suppose we're looking to get ourselves back on track again in over the coming months, and see where that takes us in 2023.
It's going to be mad this next year. It's the first year in the post-Cody era. Davies and Waterford, you mentioned Owen Kelly, a Tip legend, in the backroom team there. We had Clare burst out last year and fully show us exactly what they were capable of doing. And we have Limerick on the verge of becoming the greatest team of all time. So a nice handy championship for you to cut your teeth as captain next year.
Yeah, look, it's dog eat dog out there. I think, I suppose, hurling the 90s, I suppose, and the middle 90s, I suppose, a lot of teams came and there was different teams winning All Irelands. And even in the last number of years, there's, I suppose, before Limerick got their period of dominance, there was a few different teams that won All Irelands. So look, it's great time to be involved in inter-county hurling. It's exciting. Some of the games over the last few years, I suppose, COVID, with no crowds, I suppose, took away bits from it. But since the round robin has been introduced, I think some of the games and the matches that have been played in that and in them championships have been unbelievable. That excitement, and as you mentioned, new teams coming that maybe hadn't been there a year or two beforehand and competing at serious levels. And just, I suppose, it brings the excitement of what hurling is back to people, and it gives people hope, I suppose, that if you do put in the work, and if you, I suppose, get a run together and get things right, that every team has a chance on any given day. And that's all you can ask for, I suppose, is that you prepare well, and then if you bring it out on match day, well, you don't know what's going to happen then. So yeah, look, 2023 is going to be massively interesting, and one that I'm really, really looking forward to being involved in.
You obviously were part of a team that stopped Kilkenny doing their 5 in a row. So within Tipperary, within the institution of Tipperary hurling, there is this knowledge of what it takes to stop the greatest teams. Is there similar conversations happening about this Limerick team at the moment? Because the rest of the country is obviously fascinated with how far they can go and what their absolute peak is. But at the same time, like the Munster final 2 years ago, the first half of that performance was one of the best 35 minutes of hurling we've seen from anybody against Limerick. The second half of that was best 35 minutes we've seen from Limerick, potentially, maybe apart from the All-Ireland final against Cork, and they were perfect in that first half. So you've seen both sides of Limerick. You've seen how to go toe-to-toe with them. You've seen them at their absolute pomp. What are your thoughts on where they are at the moment?
Yeah, look, they're the standout team at the moment. They've I suppose taken the game to a new level in how they play and how they prepare, and I suppose the rest of us are looking at it and trying to get there. And for us in Tip, I suppose, given the year that's gone, like we're I suppose a bit away from that at the moment. Like I suppose we didn't win a game in Munster, and we need to, I suppose, to get ourselves back to a level where we're competing first, and then we can think about taking on the likes of Limerick and Kilkenny's and Corks and Watfords and Clare. But at the moment, I suppose we just need to get our house in order and get ourselves back to a level where we can compete at that highest level. Like the standard of some of the games in the championship last year were unbelievable. I was at the Munster final in Thurles, and it was unreal, like the pace and the power and the skill and the excitement. Like, so that's, I suppose, what gets the excitement levels going, and that's, I suppose, what keeps me going and what keeps players going is games like that you want to be involved in. And look, as a hurler and as a Tipperary hurler, I've no doubt that that's where we want to go and that's where we want to get to. But I understand too that we have a lot of work to do, and to get ourselves right first when we get back training in the new year and into February and March during the league, and then you can see where you're going after that. But we are, I suppose, after the year gone, we need to just get ourselves back to that competitive level again. And that's a challenge that I'm looking forward to as a player, and all the other players and the management are really looking forward to it as well. And look, as a player, you always dream, and like the dream obviously is to win Munster finals, to win All-Ireland finals, and to be there and thereabouts and competing every year. And that won't change for me, and that's where we want to get to. There's no doubt about that. But at the moment, I suppose we just have to take stock of where we are, get our house in order over the next few weeks, like next few months, and look, you'd see where you are then come February or March, and hopefully we'll be in a good place and able to compete with the teams at the top.
When you talk about keeping players going, Noel, I guess there's always the rumour mill when there's veterans on a team as to whether they'll continue. And Shane McCallan, 34, Bonner Maher, 33, they've both opted to keep going and continue next year. Bit of a boost when you see players like that with the experience. And look, both played on those 3 All-Ireland winning teams over the last 12 years with yourself. So good to have that experience still involved.
Yeah, it is. Like, they're 2 top-class players, and that can bring massive experience and massive knowledge and loads of skill and work and just good attitudes around the group. And there'll be lads that'll tie in with the rest of the group, and there'll be players that'll look up to them and look for guidance from them as well, and they'll be pushing to try and compete and play as well. So yeah, look, it's in any team you need different demographics and different ages and different characters, and the more, I suppose, that you have, the better chance. And then when you pull all that together, you create a team and you create a panel and a group that are open to do something and to go somewhere. And like, I think a lot can be made of age, but lads look after themselves so well nowadays that if you're able to play and you have the hunger and you're willing to put in that work, well, I don't think it matters if you're 19 or 20 or if you're 33 or 34. I suppose, take TJ Reid, for example. He was one of the best players in the championship last year, and still one of the best players in the whole country. So I don't think age really comes into it if someone has the desire and the willingness to compete and play for the team and put in that work. And it's great to have them 2 boys back in tow for 2023.
You're going to have to start answering those questions in a couple of years' time yourself. I do wonder if the split season might help players who are in their 30s to continue for an extra couple of years, in that the release valve of being with your club, I know obviously you take it incredibly seriously and it's very important to you, and you look after yourself the same way you would do in season, but it's a different type of pressure, and maybe the condensed nature of the senior inter-county season might allow players in their 30s to extend their careers. I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I suppose there's a good chance that it will. I suppose the inter-county season is shorter. You're not waiting for 4, 5, 6 weeks maybe between matches, and that definitely keeps players' appetite high and keeps your motivation high. I remember back around 2017 or 18, I think we lost the first round of Munster Championship, and we had no match for 6 weeks after that. And it's hard. Like you train for a good number of months at the start of the year, and all you want to do is play matches. So I think the new system definitely keeps players' motivation high and their desire to train, and it definitely helps. And the split season to me as a player has been a massive success. Like it just takes away any, I suppose, pulling and dragging between club and county, and you're able to devote your time to your county first, and you're able to give your full time to your club then as well, and you're not being pulled and dragged and getting into the club there the week of a match and then you're gone again for another 4 or 5 weeks, which is something I used to hate. Whereas now, like, once the club championship starts, you're there every night you train, you're there for every match, you're there the same as everybody else, and that really, really appeals to me. And it just means that you're able to give your full attention to both inter-county and to your club, and it's something that I've really, really enjoyed over the last couple of years. And obviously with COVID it did change it up a small bit, but I think it's come out the good side of it now with the split season, and it's something that I would be a huge advocate of as a player.
Well, listen, we wish you the very best of luck as the captain next year. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers, Noel.
Thanks very much, guys.
It's Noel McGrath, our tip captain, talking to us. It's time for us to start thinking about the inter-county season. The Munster Hurling Championship next year, one of the great global sporting phenomenons.
Yeah, 100%. I think you can get excited. If we're allowed to get excited about the Rugby World Cup and the Women's Football World Cup next year at this stage, I think we can get excited about January, February, the league. I've got the McKenna Cup to look forward to.
You do.
So it'll keep us going for the next month or two.
OTB AM is brought to you live with Gillette in association with Movember. Effort to shave magnificent Mo. You can sign up or donate now at Movember.com. That's it for today's show. If you missed anything, you can get it all back on podcast, which is where you'll find all of our best stuff from Off the Ball. Episode 3 of the Mike Quirk podcast is available now across the OTB podcast network with special guest Frank Dick, OBE, and ex-British Olympic coach. The latest episode of A Slight Tangent is available in Off the Ball Daily. Episode 1 of the new season of the AIB Club Championship Show with Will O'Callaghan and Aisling O'Reilly is available in the OTB GAA feed, and there will be plenty more World Cup coverage in our soccer feed as well. OTB AM back tomorrow morning. Shane and Johnny Ward in studio. We'll check in with Kev at the World Cup. Alan Quinlan will be in studio. Michael Burton will be here to discuss the Movember campaign after he completed 32 half Ironmans. What have you been doing for the last month? Plenty more besides. Right now, we're leaving you with Packie Bonner in conversation with Shane Hannon.
Alright, well, the World Cup is started in earnest, and I'm delighted to be joined by Republic of Ireland international legend Packie Bonner. Packie, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Delighted and happy to be able to talk about football.
Absolutely. It's all kicked off. Before we talk World Cup, we might talk Republic of Ireland, and the friendly window, I guess, is over, and it's all building up now towards next March. It feels like a while away, but the two keepers got their game each, Gavin Bazunu and Caoimhín Kelleher. It's a good sign for Irish football that you have two keepers at the top of their game like that are competing for the number one jersey. It's fierce competition. You've got Mark Travers as well.
Of course. Listen, we're so blessed that we have the three of them. You know, there was a period probably when I was a young man who's coming after me. Then Shea and Alan Kelly appeared. And then after Shea, we were wondering who's the next, and it's fantastic to see three young goalkeepers almost vying for the number one spot. They're all playing at a good level. Mark Travers is back in the team, and Gavin is a sensational young man to come through and play with the maturity that he does. At the level he does at this moment in time in his career. So, no, we're very blessed in that position.
Do you feel like the argument's been made for Caoimhín Kelleher that, you know, he's getting serious experience with Liverpool, with Alisson and training and all the rest, but that maybe a loan move and more game time?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask that question, and to be honest, I agree. Like any young man, we're just talking about a young man from Cork, Harrington, earlier on. I think at round about that age, 23, you've got to get game time. You've got to get out. Listen, he's going to be training with one of the best who's going to be in the World Cup, Alisson, at a big club at Liverpool. But you cannot beat game time and getting out, getting among players, making decisions, because it's all about decision making, building up enough decision making within that brain that when it comes to the big games and when you play, that it becomes almost an automatic response, and that can be done in training or it can be done in game time. Unfortunately for Caoimhín, he's not getting probably enough games, while Gavin has probably built that up through his game time, which is interesting, you know, when you look at it that way.
100%. I guess it's been an interesting number of months and even a year for Stephen Kenny, and look, we've had the 2 friendlies now, and he's blooding young players as well, but it's difficult for him because I guess it's a results-based business as well. And look, I know you're on the FAI board, but when you're looking ahead and you're seeing the group that faces us in the Euros, it's not the easiest. Netherlands and France in the same group.
No, and you're hoping maybe that France and Netherlands come off the World Cup with maybe demotivated, or maybe that they take the eye off the ball a little bit. Van Gaal will be gone, I'm sure, after this World Cup. Deschamps will probably be gone also, so that might be a bit of a change. Maybe some players gone also. But listen, they're two quality international teams. They will probably maybe be even into the quarterfinals or semi-finals, even maybe the final of this World Cup. So it's going to be no easy task, but we have a young group. Stephen is trying to blend them, trying to come up with a formula that we can win games. We know that they can actually play good football to a point, but maybe short in a few areas still. But that's an ongoing process, trying to find one or two maybe they can complement and get the balance right within the team. But it's work in progress, and it has to keep going, and hopefully we can get off to the right start in the next qualifier.
Must be the most high profile and stressful job in Ireland. Maybe it's certainly in Irish sport, because it's funny, you see split between the fans, Kenny in and Kenny out. It seems every game or every window it's a referendum over his position, which must be difficult for a manager. You know, it's results-based business, as I said, so it's stressful.
Listen, every manager knows when they're in a position like that, there's stress, there's pressure. You've got to handle it. Sometimes, you know, for Stephen, he lives in the country, so he has it every day, walking up and down the street or wherever he goes. Some managers don't live in the country and they get away from it, but that's the nature of the beast. But also, I think every manager knows that yes, you have to change the squad. It takes a bit of time. You've got to get players in, but you've got to get results at the end of it all. And time, over a period of time, you want to try and qualify. That's your job, and that's what you'll be doing. But I think while any manager's in the position, you've got to try to give them 100% support and help. And I think the fans have done that very well. Look, we had over 40,000 against Norway. It wasn't the best game in the world. We lacked a little bit of penetration. Stephen knows that. But the fans were there, and they were giving them 100% support and giving a good group of young players every help to mature and get themselves into finals. And I think that's where these players will really mature, if they can create that sort of, get over that hurdle of qualification. And then people will take notice. The big clubs will take notice of some of our young players, that they actually can perform at that level. But you have to do it. You've got to go out and do it.
I know Stephen's planning to head over and, you know, taking a few games, especially the games that involve Ireland's future opponents. What are you most looking forward to seeing in the World Cup on the pitch yourself? Like, in terms of teams, predictions for who might win it, or dark horses, that sort of thing?
It's an interesting tournament, isn't it? Because the timing of it, like, so normally we have a big build-up. We've time to make up our mind about teams and see the results. That sometimes that doesn't tell you the full tale, but you have a time, and then you sort of the marketing and all of that sort of build up happens. This time we're kind of almost straight into it. We've just finished the league seasons and around the world, and then suddenly there's this break, and within 2 weeks we start a World Cup. So that's an interesting. The players may be fitter, they may be sharper. I do expect a high, even though it's going to be very warm conditions, I do expect some teams to go out and press high and try to maintain the sort of Champions League type of form that some of the clubs have shown into international football, because that's what they're used to. It'll be interesting to see will the players get injured, because, you know, a lot of players now have gone from a club environment into an international environment without much time for adaptation. So that'll be interesting to see how some of the players get on from that perspective. But I think I'm looking for an exciting one. I think the young players, especially, you know, the likes of Vinicius Junior, Rodri, and Rodrigo, and those kind of Valverde with Uruguay, those young players who are emerging in Champions League to show now what they can do. And then the older guys like Messi and these guys, there's their swan song. Can they go out on a real high? And there's this big challenge between Ronaldo and Messi to see who's going to light up this World Cup. Sounds like you're leaning towards the South American teams. Yeah, a little bit. I think I watched Argentina against against Italy down in Wembley. I was at the game, and I thought Argentina was superb. I thought they were really strong. You know, and a lot of them players, we see them in the Champions League, but they're not the stars. But when they blend themselves into a good, strong, I think strong collective group, with a few stars in among it, then they become a really sensational team.
It's a crazy World Cup from a number of vantage points. Obviously, it's unprecedented in terms of just Qatar and the selection process and how they got the gig in the first place, I guess. And even today, just all the One Love armband. England were going to wear it, and now they're not going to wear it, and a number of countries have come out and said the same, essentially. So, what's your take on the other side of Qatar, I suppose?
Yeah, well, I think the FAI, and as a board member, we've made it very clear that we support immigrant workers and their task, and all the other people that has been talked about. I think we're very clear in what we've said, and we also have said that maybe this time we can use football to highlight some of these issues, and hopefully things will be better for the community in Qatar after the World Cup and so on. And I think that's the message I think we have to deliver here, that football can be something to get those positive messages out, to say that everybody's equal and everybody should be equal on the field of play, and the ones who come and support also the teams.
I suppose even I was chatting to Noel Mooney recently, and he was kind of pointing out, from the Football Association of Wales perspective, I guess they were going to leave it up to players themselves, leaders groups within the players, if they wanted to perform some actions during matches, so be it. It might be the wisest move.
I think players will focus on the football. They'll go out there. They can wear armbands. They can maybe have but in terms of if you get caught up in other things, then you're not going to be focused on what your job is, football. So I think they'll focus mainly on the football, and then maybe in interviews and so on afterwards they'll make their point. And listen, these are entities on their own now, footballers, aren't they? Nobody can control them, nobody can say what they should say, and they are leaders, and they're leaders for a sport that's international, so they will come out and say their bit.
One of the things I was chatting to Noel Mooney about was the Euro 2028 bid, this prospective bid between ourselves and England and Wales and Scotland, and Northern Ireland, of course. But what's your take on that? Like, it could be something that, on the one hand costs a lot of money, but the other hand it will inspire a lot of young players.
I can't see why people would object to having a Euros here in Ireland and Scotland and England and Wales and Northern Ireland. I just can't see it, because I think if I was a young man, when I look back to my own day, we used to look to further afield for inspiration from football. To have it in our own country would be incredible for our young generation. So I'm all for it, to be perfectly honest. And I know there is cost to it, but maybe the results and whatever happens thereafter might outweigh the financial cost.
I suppose every time the World Cup rolls around, Packie, every 4 years you're reminded of the name Daniel Timofte, and it just comes up naturally. Like, is it the case? I remember watching an interview years ago with Neil Armstrong, and he was almost getting sick of being asked to be walking on the moon. Is it the case with yourself that so many years later, it's, especially every 4 years, it seems to crop up in these memories you're asked about, the same split-second moment?
It's amazing, if you went around Europe or the world and you asked about Daniel Timofte, nobody probably remembers him, but here in Ireland everybody remembers Daniel Timofte, which is quite incredible. I spoke to him in an interview many years ago, and it was really nice to be able to speak to him about how his life went and so on and so forth, and how both of us coming together, him missing it, me saving it, how it affected both our lives, and that. But it's in my DNA, it's in his DNA, and we can't get rid of it, to be honest. And I don't mind people talking about it, to be honest. It's a good memory. It's a good memory. There's emotion around it also.
Last week, you kept in touch for a small bit after the World Cup then?
Yeah, I was asked to talk to him. Just somebody was doing an interview with him, and we were speaking on a podcast, whatever, and he had spoken about. I wanted to know really from him was, what was going through his mind. I know what was going through my mind leading it up, but I want to know. And he had mentioned that one of his players had said to him that I was slow going down on my right hand side, and to put it outside, and he normally hits the penalty down the middle. That's what he said to me, absolutely, and he says he changed his mind. And you can imagine if he didn't change his mind, where would we be today?
Sliding doors moment. Jesus, yeah. Well, you weren't too slow getting down your right hand side.
That day. But that's what analysis can be wrong also.
Yeah, of course. Funny, we had John Aldridge on a roadshow there in the last week or two, and he got very emotional talking about Jack Charlton and what he meant to Irish football, and he made the very valid point. in terms of a statue of Jack, there's none. And even, you know, whether it's around the Aviva Stadium, someone joked that it could be in the middle of the Walkinstown roundabout after all the celebrations in Italia 90. But I mean, do you think there should be some sort of commemoration to Jack at the Aviva Stadium?
I think commemorations of individuals is a good thing. You know, I'm very attached to Celtic Football Club because I played there for 17 years, and they've got their statues outside of the Jock Dean, of you know, Jimmy Johnson, of those kind of people, Billy McNeil and that, and it's always nice because fans go up and get their pictures taken, and they're there for forevermore. And it would be nice, not just Jack, but maybe other people that has gone in the past also, maybe people in the future, but it would be nice to have that around. And I know it was shared with rugby, and there's not maybe that same kind of almost reason. Maybe there's a few rugby people too, of course, that would be up there. So, but it's nice to have those places to go to and keep the memory alive. That's for sure, because Jack was special to all of us guys. I know he would have his critics also, like everybody in football. Even when he was so successful over here, there was people criticising him for the way he played the game and so on and so forth, and we could have done better. But that's the nature of football. We all have an opinion. We all love it, and that's why we talk about it. And that's why we're talking about it today again also. But in the memory of Jack, of what he achieved and what he brought to the country, and what he did for us group of players to ignite the country a little bit and really start something that was very, very special for all of us, and especially you guys at the age you were. I don't know what age you were. You were probably only a gasser.
Only a babber.
Yeah.
You mentioned Celtic there, Packie, and I know that the disappointing Champions League campaign, but what are your thoughts on what Ange Postecoglou's been doing at Celtic Park? Because there's been positive stuff, and we're seeing the news today that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst's been sacked from Rangers.
He's gone from the Rangers. I didn't get that news. Sorry.
So it's only in the last hour or two. It's an interesting time at Celtic. You're seeing, you know, Rangers struggling, and even Celtic playing a nice brand of football under Ange Postecoglou.
I've done most of the games all season because I work for BBC over by, and it's been a pleasure actually. It's a pleasure when you're working and you're not having to do a critique all the time on what they're doing wrong. The critique is on everything positive. What he's been able to do in a year and a half really, to come in, change the whole squad around was incredible. Last window in January, when they brought in the Japanese, just gave them the edge and everybody else. And he'll probably do it again. He'll probably bring in one or two more. The way that he plays, the intensity he plays with, he's got players who are very, very technical. There's some of them going to the World Cup. Aaron Moy's going. Carter Vickers is going, which is fantastic. Maeda is going with Japan. So it's going to be nice to see how they get on in their countries. But over in Scotland, they're back to ruling the roost over there. And I think it's all down to the manager. I think the way, and he's calm. He doesn't get carried away too much. He doesn't go over the top, and he doesn't go too low when things aren't going so well. Even within the Champions League, it was really interesting narrative. If you look at it, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst has been sacked. Maybe he was too negative when he came out, and the fans didn't like it, even though they lost badly. But so did Celtic. Celtic lost a lot of games also. But the narrative that Ange Postecoglou was supposed to bring out was much more positive, much more about we keep playing our game, keep doing the right thing, and it'll come right. And that then sort of kind of almost, the fans were happy with that, and they did see them create a lot of chances within the games. And I think then he was able to back that up by maybe using the stats around that to back up his narrative, and they love him.
Yeah, big time. Can I just ask you finally, Packie, and it was something that it was a lovely moment before the Norway friendly, I think it was, where little kids from Creasla in Donegal came out, and look, that's look, it's tough for everyone in Donegal, and for some reason Donegal seems to be a county that's constantly hit by tragedy in many different aspects. But that must have been quite an emotional moment for yourself and everyone in Donegal, but also to see the likes of Seamus Coleman, a role model, even meeting these kids from Creasla was a special moment before the game.
Listen, it was a shock what happened. I was there in the summer. I passed through that part. I was down playing golf, and and a lot of people I spoke to used that place and that garage and dropped in there on lots and lots of occasions, and for it to happen out of nothing was quite an incredible shock for everybody concerned, and the families and the people that was lost and the families that are affected, and that hurt will go on for a long, long time. When you're abroad, we always become very Irish and very Donegalish, and we can almost have a. I don't know if we need reasons to bring that Donegalness out in us, but this was certainly one. We felt for everybody. We prayed with them. We I suppose cried with them to a point, and we felt their real hurt and their real sadness. And around the world, and I've spoken to so many people. I went to New York a couple of weeks ago for an Irish Donegal dance, and it was the talk. That's all that they were talking about, and hopefully, stuff that maybe has gone on since will help these people and help the families to maybe come to terms with it. It'll take them a long, long time. So a tough time. But listen, us Donegal people, we're strong, we're resilient. We have had a lot of disasters in and around my area too, in the sea and so on and so forth. But we stick together, and we always do. We talk about each other in Donegal, by the way, but we stick together when we're away from it, and this is an occasion that we all come together.
Warm words, lovely words. Packie, thanks a million as always.
OTB AM with Gillette in association with Movember. Effortless shave, magnificent modes.